The main character of our story is a vampire who once met a very shameful and painful end. In his last moments, he was not shown any mercy. Instead, he was laughed at and mocked. But just when his life seemed completely over, something unbelievable happened. He was sent back to the past. With clear memories of the future still in his mind, he makes a firm decision. This time, he will become stronger, gain real power, and completely change his fate. How will he do this? What dangers and hardships will stand in his way? That is what today's story is about. On a dark night filled with heavy rain and loud thunder, a holy knight finally appears. He stands before the vampire, mocking him with a cruel smile. He sarcastically asks if the vampire enjoyed hiding for the last 6 months like a coward. The knight openly confronts him, calling him a filthy monster responsible for countless deaths. He admits that the vampire was clever for manipulating the holy knights and escaping them for so long. Still, the knight coldly announces that this is where everything ends. From this moment on, he says, God will never forgive the vampire's sins. The knight slowly pulls out his sword and tells the vampire to feel honored. After all, he will die by the blade of the famous vampire slayer. The vampire collapses to the ground, blood pouring from his wounds. Looking down at him with disgust, the knight scolds him harshly. He says the vampire's twisted and corrupted body is clear proof of his sins, proof of how he deceived the church and rejected its judgment. Suddenly, the knight bursts into a strange and hysterical laugh. He reveals a terrifying truth. The reason they failed to catch the vampire for so long was not because they were unable, it was because they allowed it. He deliberately joined the hunt late and let the vampire run wild, killing and escaping on purpose. His goal was to make the final execution look dramatic, elegant, and entertaining. It was meant to send a warning to anyone who dared to stand against the church. As the vampire stares at the sword that is about to end his life, a painful realization hits him. This world does not care about justice or willpower. It follows only one rule, the survival of the strongest. Power alone decides fate. That was the truth he had already understood, which is why he chose to run and hide. The knight's sword slashes through the vampire's body. Pain spreads through every part of him. In those final seconds, he questions himself. Was running away really the wrong choice? Even now, the knight continues to insult him, saying that his very existence is an insult to the church and a stain on its honor. As his vision slowly fades, the vampire stretches his hand toward the sky. His heart is filled with regret. He wishes, just once, for another chance. Then, his body collapses, lifeless, while the knight laughs in victory. Suddenly, the vampire gasps for air. He wakes up inside a tent, breathing heavily in panic. His chest rises and falls rapidly. Confused, he touches his neck, arms, and legs. They are completely fine. There are no wounds, no cuts, nothing like the injuries he had when he died. He stares at the bandages wrapped around his hands, unable to believe what he is seeing. He keeps telling himself that he should be dead. Looking around, he realizes this is not a dream. He is inside the same tent he lived in before the holy knights began hunting him. His eyes fall on marks carved into the wooden wall, dates he had etched long ago. When he reads them carefully, his heart starts pounding. He has returned to the past, exactly 6 months earlier, before the hunting squad ever started chasing him. He stands frozen in the middle of the tent, unable to move. Has he truly gone back in time? Slowly, he clenches his fist. At that moment, he understands the truth. This is a real second chance, and he cannot waste it. The story then shifts to a quiet forest near the village of Broadwyn, a place where humans rarely go. This is where Eugene once lived, hiding from the world. He was a weak vampire, surviving day by day while holding his breath in fear. He never wanted to drink human blood, but one time, long ago, his instincts took control. That single mistake marked the beginning of his downfall. The very next day, mercenaries arrived. 5 days later, holy knights followed and began searching the entire village. They chased him relentlessly, for 1 month, then 1 year. No matter how well he hid, they eventually found him. For 12 long years, Eugene lived in constant fear, surviving only by drinking animal blood deep inside the forest. He still does not know how or why he returned to the past. But one thing is clear in his mind: he will never repeat the same mistakes again. Eugene starts running. This time, even if he dies, he refuses to die as a weak coward hiding in the shadows. He must become strong enough to survive even if they find him again. Standing under the soft green glow of the moon, he makes a bold decision. He will change how he survives. From now on, he will use vampire magic. Eugene explains the most basic rule of vampires. They gain power by drinking blood. The stronger the person or creature the blood comes from, the greater the power the vampire receives. As he speaks, his expression suddenly stiffens. His instincts scream at him. Something dangerous is coming. In the dark and silent forest, an unknown threat is rapidly approaching him. The surface of the water suddenly bursts open, and the forest lord appears. It is a huge monster with frightening jaws, rushing straight toward Eugene. For a brief moment, Eugene freezes in shock as he stares at the creature. Then he quickly forces his body to move and narrowly dodges the attack. At that moment, he bitterly realizes how weak his current body still is, since even dodging takes all his effort. Eugene tells himself that he doesn't need to kill the monster right away. He only needs to cause a small wound. That would be enough for him to drink its blood and gain power. With that thought, Eugene jumps into the air and launches an attack. He completely abandons his old way of surviving, which was hiding his presence and running away. He understands now that his previous method led only to failure, so there is no reason to hesitate anymore. Driven by a desperate hunger for power, Eugene swings his sword with all his strength. However, a shocking sound rings out. His sword shatters as it bounces off the monster's incredibly tough skin. Before he can react, the forest lord strikes back with its massive tail. Eugene is sent flying through the air and crashes violently into the water, blood spilling from his body. As the monster prepares to attack again, Eugene realizes that he may have underestimated this creature. Wanderers are monsters that roam freely through the wilderness and are not restricted to demonic areas. Some of them even carry magic stones in places where mana is scarce. These stones are far more valuable than ordinary gems. Eugene understands that if he can obtain a magic stone, it could greatly shift the battle in his favor. Still, the gap in strength between him and the forest lord is overwhelming. Eugene is struck once more by a devastating blow. Deep inside, he admits that he misjudged the value of the opportunity he was given. He is certain that this monster could kill him before he can even leave a single scratch on its body. When the forest lord opens its jaws and bites down on him, Eugene briefly wonders if he foolishly believed that another chance would come even if he failed this time. He immediately rejects that thought, telling himself he is not that arrogant. As the monster swallows him whole, memories from his past life flood his mind, memories of living while crawling, hiding his presence, holding his breath, and doing nothing but desperately trying to survive. At that moment, Eugene's eyes glow a deep crimson red. He makes a firm decision. This time, he will fight in order to live. Bright magical symbols spread across his body as he screams silently inside his heart, pushing himself to fight and win. His body begins to change, and his muscles rapidly grow and swell. He knows for certain that if he does not win now, there will be no next chance waiting for him. From inside the monster's stomach, Eugene begins tearing through its insides with all his strength. He clings tightly to one belief: there is no future after defeat. Victory must be taken by his own hands. He focuses his attack on the monster's magic stone. Suddenly, the forest lord's body explodes violently, blood scattering everywhere. Eugene emerges from the wreckage, fully understanding the truth that survival has always belonged to those who stand on the blood of others. Surrounded by the monster's remains, Eugene remembers the promise he made to himself. If he was ever given another chance, he would never run away again. He would fight. Standing beneath the moonlight, now transformed by his newfound power, his long hair flowing in the wind, Eugene declares his resolve to claim blood and victory for himself. After the battle, the night grows silent. Eugene stands alone, realizing that he didn't just absorb the forest lord's blood, he also absorbed its magic stone. The amount of energy he gained far exceeds his expectations. As he looks at the floating corpse of the forest lord, he notices that the mana crystal it left behind is different in both size and color from normal ones. From this, Eugene understands the ability he has gained. He can now transform his skin into hard, black scales. He concludes that if he can completely block sunlight with these scales, he might be able to move freely even during the daytime. His memories return once more. He originally learned about the forest lord from mercenaries. The swamps were not large at first, but seasonal floods caused them to expand, which led to the monster appearing and attacking humans. During that chaos, Eugene once managed to drink some of the forest lord's blood when it was injured. After killing several mercenaries, he escaped. When he realized how powerful that blood was, he decided to return and absorb it completely. However, even with his new strength, Eugene knows the truth. This level of power is still not enough for him to stand against the holy knight, young Dirt. So, Eugene understands that he must not lose any battles battles unless he is completely sure he can win. He knows that the Holy Knight has an extraordinary ability to track monsters and the undead no matter where they hide. Because of this, running away or hiding is useless. Instead of escaping, Eugene realizes he must continue gathering strength and prepare himself for a direct confrontation. As sunrise gets closer, Eugene decides to head back before dawn arrives. He chooses to delay testing the true ability of the crystal for now. Suddenly, the quiet surroundings are shattered by a mocking and sarcastic voice. The voice laughs at the fake lord who took control of the land and turned the once beautiful lake into a filthy swamp, declaring that his death has finally come. The mysterious voice then thanks Eugene for killing that fake lord, who died in such a pathetic way. As the water around Eugene begins to move in a strange manner, the voice continues, saying that Eugene must now pay the price for his sin, carelessly spilling blood and polluting the land. At that moment, a water fairy appears. She introduces herself as Miran, the guardian of the lake. She declares that this area is her private territory and threatens Eugene with the anger of the forest and the land itself. She claims she will tear him apart and curse him completely. Eugene shows no reaction to her dramatic threats. Calmly and coldly, he asks who she is. His question shocks her. She realizes that he didn't hear her long and proud speech at all, because the ability to sense spirits is extremely rare and only a few people possess it. When Eugene repeats his question seriously, Miran becomes even more confused and stunned. She confirms that he can both see and hear her, then shyly asks if he heard her call him a bald vampire earlier. After that, she introduces herself properly as a water spirit named Miran. She explains that she was the mistress of this place before the crocodile monster enslaved her 15 years ago. Trying to make herself look better, she describes herself as a strategic partner who helped purify the water to attract prey for the monster. However, she then sincerely thanks Eugene for freeing her and cleaning up the area. Miran praises Eugene's intelligence, believing that the bald, old man appearance she saw earlier was a perfect disguise used to lower the monster's guard. While listening, Eugene notices that one of the tattoos on his body has disappeared. Miran, full of admiration, asks about the meaning of those tattoos. She wonders if they are warrior marks or the names of people he has killed. Eugene replies honestly that he doesn't know. He says they have always been there. He explains that he was born a vampire and that the only thing he remembers about his origin is having 10 tattoos on his body. He has no memories of his early life and was satisfied living quietly without thinking too deeply about who he was. Eugene begins to wonder if the tattoos are some kind of marks or seals that unlock over time. After that thought, he decides to leave. He orders Miran to protect the forest, which completely shocks her. She is surprised by how quickly he leaves after finally finding someone he can talk to. Not wanting to be left behind, she follows him, complaining about how bored she is and how rare it is to meet someone who can see spirits. She tries to convince Eugene to stay and help purify the swamp, explaining that it will take a long time. She offers him clean water as a gift for a pale and handsome man like him, proudly claiming that fairy water tastes incredible. She even spits water from her mouth and asks him to taste it. Eugene looks at her with clear disgust and tells her to stay back. Miran continues chasing after him without giving up. She keeps offering to purify water or create more in strange and unpleasant ways, calling him Mr. Nightwalker, and begging him to stop. Several days later, night falls over the village of Broadwin. Suddenly, panic spreads when a villager runs to call the village chief, shouting that the red-eyed monster has appeared. The villagers gather together, filled with fear and tension. However, instead of an attack, they find a massive pile of hunted animals left behind. The villagers stare in shock at the huge amount of meat. They wonder if they are really allowed to take all of it. Confused, they question what could be going on inside the mind of that red-eyed monster. Normally, he brings them hunted animals only once every 2 weeks, but this visit came earlier than expected. The monster lives at the base of the mountain, far from the village, and has stayed there for the past 10 years without causing serious harm to the villagers. When he first appeared 10 years ago, everyone was terrified. But over time, things changed. Although the village chief cannot understand what the creature is thinking, he nervously agrees when Eugene asks for permission to enter the village for a short time. Because Eugene always pays taxes in the form of dead animals, an unusual relationship formed. The villagers chose to ignore him, and in return, he left them alone. The village chief nervously stutters a welcome to the guest he has not seen for a very long time. Everyone freezes in surprise when Eugene removes his mask and reveals his face. With a calm and gentle smile, smile, he tells them that after spending a long time in isolation, he has completely recovered from his illness. He explains that he came today especially to share this good news with them. Eugene then sincerely thanks the villagers for all the help they gave him in the past. He says he truly wants to repay their kindness. As the villagers stare at him in shock, he tells them not to hesitate to call him whenever they need help. If any misfortune ever comes to the village, he wants them to rely on him. After saying this, he bids them farewell with a warm and charming smile. He then leaves, surrounded by a strange aura of light, leaving everyone stunned and unable to look away. After he is gone, the villagers begin whispering among themselves. They wonder if the monster who lived in the forest was actually a half-elf or maybe an exiled noble. Since he always wore a mask, they never imagined he was so handsome. On the way back through the forest, the fairy Miran asks Eugene in disbelief why he gave all the hunted animals to the villagers. She asks what he is planning. Eugene answers calmly while walking that although vampires are known in the human world for blood and slaughter, showing one's face is an important sign of goodwill. Miran disagrees and asks if he plans to make friends with humans instead of eating them. She reminds him that he said he would leave this place in a few days, so getting involved with the villagers seems pointless. Eugene suddenly stops walking. Inside his heart, he admits that he was wrong to think nothing tied him to this place. He realizes he cannot just watch quietly while what is about to happen unfolds. Miran is shocked when Eugene tells her a horrifying prophecy. He says that mercenaries will soon attack the village and slaughter everyone living there. Their real goal is to kidnap a specific boy and deliver him to the regional lord, Sir Terwin. To erase all evidence and leave no witnesses, they will kill every villager. Eugene understands that this massacre will later cause holy knights to swarm the area, leading directly to the future he already knows. Because of that, he must stop this disaster. Miran doubts his words, saying she cannot believe mercenaries would wipe out an entire village. Eugene remains mysterious, and Miran thinks to herself that even after spending several days with him, she still cannot understand what he is thinking. Eugene tells her that very soon, she will see for herself whether he is lying or not. Eugene decides that his first move must be to gain the villagers' trust so they see him as harmless. This confuses Miran, as she cannot understand how gaining trust is connected to stopping the mercenaries. Suddenly, Eugene stops again, and Miran walks straight into his back, complaining in pain and asking why he stopped so suddenly. Eugene has noticed a group of armed men approaching them. One of the men asks who this person is standing in their way. The mercenaries mistake Eugene for an ordinary villager because of his simple clothing, which disrupts their plan to quietly ambush the village. One of them comments that Eugene is far too handsome for a normal man. Still, they decide to kill him quickly since he is alone, unarmed, and might scream and expose them. Without any warning, one mercenary rushes from behind, swinging a huge axe to kill him. Miran screams in fear, warning Eugene. Eugene prepares to use his power to respond to the sudden betrayal. In the blink of an eye, a red light flashes from his eye in the darkness. Moving at incredible speed, Eugene slashes his attacker, blood spraying through the air, marking the start of the plan he had already decided on. In that moment, Eugene recalls his earlier conversation with Miran, where he explained that gaining the villagers' trust was necessary at all costs so as not to raise suspicion. Miran is stunned when she sees Eugene kill the mercenary with a single strike. Eugene stands there, blood covering his face and clothes, and coldly declares the death sentence of all the mercenaries present. He states clearly that he will not leave a single one of them alive. Fear spreads through the mercenaries as they witness his unnatural power. One of them screams in terror, shouting that this man is not human but a vampire. Another mercenary tries to calm the others, yelling that they should not be afraid. He argues that this is actually good news. If they capture the vampire alive and hand him over to the church, they will receive a massive reward. With that thought, he charges forward, raising his massive sword to attack. Shock instantly spreads across the mercenary's face when Eugene catches the sword blade with his bare hand. He grips the sharp edge with unnatural strength, stopping it completely. In one smooth movement, Eugene slips past the man's guard and strikes him down, blood spraying everywhere. At that moment, the mercenaries realize they are not fighting an ordinary vampire. Understanding how dangerous he is, they decide that even taking his dead body would be enough. Attacks begin pouring in from every direction. One of them shouts, aiming to cut off Eugene's head. But Eugene moves through them like a shadow, ripping their bodies apart one after another. One mercenary screams in terror, calling him a demon, while another warns the rest not to rush him carelessly. A large bald mercenary steps forward, holding a heavy spiked mace. He threatens to smash Eugene completely. When the mace comes crashing down, Eugene blocks it with his hand, shocking the mercenary by stopping such a powerful strike so easily. Eugene notices that the sun has begun to set, giving him a complete advantage. He snaps the man's weapon apart and kills him with a single devastating blow, declaring calmly that the night belongs to him. Eugene stands among the scattered corpses, thinking that this is the perfect moment to erase all traces of blood. The remaining mercenaries lose what little courage they have left. Screaming in fear, they shout that they must attack together because this monster cannot be defeated alone. Soon after, the villagers arrive with torches, led by the village chief. Their faces are filled with shock as they look at the torn and broken bodies. The chief asks in disbelief how something so terrible could have happened. One villager cannot bear the sight and throws up. The chief then turns to Eugene and asks suspiciously if he did all of this in such a brutal way. Eugene denies it coldly. He says that he found the scene like this while returning from checking his traps in the forest. Pointing at the bodies, he explains that the mercenaries were ambushed on their way to attack Broadwind village. Then, he gestures toward what he claims are the real attackers. The villagers gasp when they see the bodies of black wolves lying among the dead mercenaries. Eugene carefully builds his lie, saying that the wolves were many in number and were eating the corpses when he arrived. He claims he killed some of them, while the rest ran away and might still be watching nearby. The chief is amazed, shocked that Eugene managed to kill such dangerous beasts all by himself. One villager inspects the bodies closely and confirms to the chief that there are clear claw marks on them, which removes suspicion from Eugene. Another villager supports this, saying all the corpses show signs of wolf attacks. Feeling ashamed, the chief apologizes to Eugene for doubting him, and Eugene accepts the apology politely. Eugene then asks what should be done with the bodies, saying he cannot leave them like this. The chief decides they should be buried in the village. Nearby, Miran whispers mockingly, pointing out that Eugene lies with every word he speaks. In truth, the wolves were not responsible for the killings. They only appeared after Eugene had already killed the mercenaries. Eugene killed the wolves as well, then used the jaw of a dead wolf to deliberately create bite marks and wounds on the mercenaries' bodies to support his story and hide the truth of his massacre. Miran wonders silently why Eugene cares so much about how the villagers see him. Hiding his crimes makes sense, but he could have simply walked away and let them suspect whatever they wanted. Instead, he chose to stay and protect his reputation. Watching him, Miran realizes that Eugene is clearly planning something. With a serious expression, Eugene approaches the village chief. He tells him that he searched the mercenaries' bodies to find belongings that could be returned to their families. During that search, he found a sealed letter and asks the chief to read it. The chief takes the letter with trembling hands and immediately recognizes the seal on it. It is the seal of Lord Terwin, the ruler of the region. As he reads the contents, his eyes widen in horror. His voice shakes as he asks if what he is reading is truly real. Suddenly, the chief turns toward the villagers and shouts, urgently asking for a boy named Vilai. Someone replies that the boy is inside the village. At the same time, Vilai is shown inside one of the houses, calmly eating his food, unaware of what is about to happen. The letter reveals a frightening truth. It says that the boy might be the illegitimate son of Lord Terwin. When the village chief understands this, he is completely shaken. He realizes that the mercenaries did not come to loot the village randomly. They had a clear and specific goal, to capture that boy. The chief is stunned to learn that a child of noble blood had been living among them all this time without anyone knowing. The scene then shifts back to the battlefield from a short time earlier. The mercenary captain stands frozen in disbelief as he watches Eugene slaughter his men with overwhelming power. Eugene moves like lightning among them, ripping their bodies apart with his bare hands before they can even react. The mercenaries quickly understand that running away will only lead to certain death. One of them screams, pushing the others to fight instead of hesitating. They force themselves to gather courage, telling each other that no matter how monstrous Eugene is, he still has only 2 arms and 2 legs. With that thought, they charge at him together. The mercenary captain, injured and paralyzed by fear, finds himself unable to escape. He curses his terrible luck for encountering such a monster at this moment. Still, he slowly approaches Eugene from behind. In response, Eugene delivers a brutal kick that crushes the captain's armor and sends him flying. His body smashes violently into a massive tree, and he coughs up blood from the intense pain. The captain crawls on the ground among the corpses of his men, begging Eugene to stop killing. His voice trembles with terror as he asks if Eugene had been waiting for them all along and why he chose to target them specifically. He tries to defend himself, saying they were only doing their job. Eugene cuts him off with glowing eyes and a terrifying expression. He demands to know what kind of job this is and coldly declares that this village belongs to him. Panicking, the captain apologizes and says he didn't know the village was under Eugene's protection. He insists that they did not come to hunt vampires or creatures like him. The captain then reveals the truth. He explains that the illegitimate son of the Terwin family is hiding in that village. Everyone believed the boy was missing, while in reality, he was living there under a hidden identity. Their mission, he claims, was only to find and capture the boy. Eugene accuses him of lying cleverly. He points out that there is no reason to bring such a large number of mercenaries for a simple search. He presses the captain, asking if they plan to wipe out the entire village. The captain first denies it in confusion, but then admits that Eugene's conclusion is not entirely wrong. The captain confesses that they were not hired by the head of the Terwin family. Instead, the ones who ordered the mission were Kumar Terwin and Veryl Terwin. Eugene immediately understands that this is part of a political struggle among nobles. The captain hurriedly explains that their large numbers were only meant as a safety measure, in case something went wrong during the kidnapping. He begs Eugene for forgiveness. Then the name Veryl Terwin strikes Eugene like thunder. He knows that name very well. Veryl Terwin is the leader of the vampire hunter squad and the knight who hunted him in the past together with the holy knight, Young Dirt. Eugene quickly pieces everything together. As a knight, Veryl would never openly order mercenaries to massacre an entire village. That means the decision to kill everyone must have been made by the mercenaries themselves to erase evidence. At that moment, Eugene finally understands why the holy knights found him in his previous life. It wasn't because of a mistake he made. It was because the complete disappearance of a village triggered a massive investigation, which eventually led them straight to him. The captain continues begging, saying he only thought this mission would be easy money. He claims that if he had known Eugene was there, he would never have taken the job. Eugene coldly tells the captain to leave. He warns him about the wolves he might encounter on his way back. The captain is stunned. He never expected to be spared. He begins stuttering words of gratitude, thanking Eugene for showing mercy and believing his life has been saved. In the very next instant, Eugene moves like lightning. With a single swift strike, he sends the captain's head flying, ending his life instantly. The fairy Miran is shocked by how easily Eugene kills the man. But Eugene calmly explains his action. He says that the mercenary already knew his true nature as a vampire, and he cannot allow someone like that to live and spread his secret. He adds coldly that the wolves around them are hungry, and it is time to feed them. Eugene then returns to the villagers to complete his lie. He tells the village chief that the dead mercenaries were actually guards who came to escort the boy Vilai to the castle. This revelation shocks everyone. The villagers remember that Vilai came to their village 8 years ago and that his mother died last year. Fear grips their hearts when they realize that all the guards who were supposed to protect him are now dead. Seeing their fear, Eugene steps forward and offers his help. He says that he can personally escort the boy and protect him all the way to the city. He explains that his long experience living in the forest and avoiding monsters makes him suitable for the task. The village chief hesitates, saying that they cannot ask such a favor from someone they once feared. Eugene smiles confidently and says that a knight never refuses the chance to help others. Hearing this, Miran secretly mocks his stiff expression and his smooth lying. Confusion spreads among the villagers, and Miran is also stunned by the word knight, wondering what Eugene means. Without hesitation, Eugene formally introduces himself. He calls himself Jan Eugene of the noble Eugene family and apologizes for being late in properly introducing himself. Miran whispers in disbelief, shocked by his boldness in pretending to be a noble. Immediately, the atmosphere in the village changes. The villagers start scolding one another for their past rudeness toward Sir Eugene, who they now believe is a noble instead of a monster. Miran whispers to Eugene that his lie has gone too far, but he reassures her with a sly smile. He explains that these villagers have never seen a real noble in their lives, so tricking them is easy. Eugene knows that even if he pretends to be noble, no one here has the ability to tell whether it is true or not. The villagers gather around him eagerly. They begin making excuses for why he lived alone in the forest for so long. Some wonder if it was part of harsh night training, while others think he was recovering from battle injuries. Eugene plays along and says he cut ties with people because of special circumstances. This convinces them that his hunting skills came from night training. The village chief apologizes sadly for the village's poverty and their inability to reward Eugene properly for his help. Eugene responds humbly, saying that all he wants is a place to stay for the night to rest. The chief warmly welcomes him, saying it is a great honor to host him in his simple home. The next morning, Eugene looks out the window of the wooden house deep in the forest. He raises his hand and activates the skin reinforcement ability he gained from the forest lord. He watches as his skin slowly turns into hard black scales. Realizing that these scales can block sunlight to a large extent, Eugene decides to use this ability to travel during the day and avoid unnecessary trouble. Miran appears again and mocks him, calling him an ignorant vampire who claims to be a knight despite not even being able to read. Eugene ignores her teasing. He says he will leave this place soon anyway and tells her to speak politely and help him with his current goal instead. Miran is amazed by how he has changed, from living in isolation to making friends and accepting responsibilities. Soon, the villagers arrive and tell Eugene that everything is ready to leave. Eugene proudly gestures toward them and explains to Miran how he gained high social status overnight. He then explains his way of thinking. Humans trust authority and status more than beautiful words. If you show status first, you can turn 100 lies into just 10 and still make people believe them. As Eugene puts his mask back on, he admits to himself that this trick worked only because the village is remote and simple. He knows that real nobles would never believe such a fake story so easily. Eugene decides that he will turn his lies into real facts. Using the trust he has gained through his good actions, the village chief reads out an explanation written by Eugene and presents it to the boy, Vilide. Inside his mind, Eugene understands that mixing lies with real skills is the best way to make everyone fully believe him. Vilide politely introduces himself and says that he is looking forward to receiving guidance from Sir Eugene during their journey. Eugene realizes that if he wants all these lies to become solid truth, he desperately needs a high social status. So once again, he introduces himself to the boy as Jan Eugene of the Eugene family. The two of them begin their journey together. Eugene is firmly determined to use this boy as a stepping stone to become a true noble. Soon, they arrive near the outskirts of Bram's village, just as the wooden sign shows. Eugene silently notes that the information he received was correct. Eugene then asks the boy if he knows how to read. Vilide replies that he does, explaining that his late mother taught him letters. He adds that even though his mother was of low status, she learned how to read and write from someone she loved. However, he never imagined that this person was Sir Terwin. Hearing this, the fairy Miran sees a perfect chance and suggests that Eugene should ask the boy to teach him letters, saying that everything is going in his favor. Vilide is shocked and confused by the request. He cannot understand how a knight could be unable to read or write. Seeing the situation turning dangerous, Eugene quickly tries to fix it. He makes up a dramatic story, saying that his title as a knight is only a front and that his family actually fell into ruin. Because of that, he lived by relying only on the sword, not the pen, to survive. Vilide listens with deep emotion and believes the story completely. At the same time, Eugene strengthens his own belief. First make them doubt, then make them believe. Once someone trusts you, that trust becomes a thick shield that protects every lie. The fairy Miran mocks Eugene's perfect acting and warns him that telling too many lies may eventually raise suspicion. However, Vilide's eyes are full of trust, clearly showing that he has completely swallowed the lie without even a tiny doubt. The boy sincerely apologizes to Eugene for his earlier suspicions. He admits that he was cautious because the villagers described Eugene as a monster rather than a noble. He blames himself for being prejudiced and believes his judgment was influenced by those rumors. Vilide decides that from now on, he will judge people only by what he sees with his own eyes, not by what others say. He even makes excuses for Eugene, thinking that perhaps he neglected studying because of his life as a warrior. Vilide then offers to secretly teach Eugene how to read whenever possible, so he will not feel embarrassed in front of others. As the boy asks Eugene to tell him more about his past, a dangerous arrow suddenly flies past his face. Vilide screams in fear and falls to the ground, while Eugene calmly notices the attack. Bandits appear from among the trees, and one of them mocks his companion for failing to aim properly and hit the target. Vilide trembles in terror as he looks at them, wondering if they are thieves. The bandits underestimate Eugene and the boy based on their appearance, thinking this will be quick and easy. They order them to drop their luggage and empty their pockets immediately, threatening to kill them if they do not hurry. In the next instant, Eugene draws his sword. Ready to fight, he moves with supernatural speed, instantly closing the distance. With a single strike, he sends the leader's head flying into the air. Vilide watches the scene in complete shock as one of the bandits screams for their leader, stunned by Eugene's sudden and bloody attack. Eugene moves smoothly and gracefully, exactly as he wants, enjoying his strength in battle. One bandit charges at him with an axe, screaming insults. Eugene moves like lightning and cleanly separates his head from his body. Eugene continues killing his enemies with rapid slashing strikes, blood splattering all around. One thief cries out for help as he sees his companions falling, but Eugene flashes forward and pierces his chest. As he slaughters them coldly, Eugene wonders why humans choose to rob and kill those weaker than themselves. While stabbing another thief in the neck, he questions whether appearing weak gives others the right to torture. As the thief takes his final breath, Eugene calmly asks the boy Vilide if learning to read will help him understand this cruel nature of humans. Vilide watches everything with wide, horrified eyes, remembering his promise to judge only by what he sees. Eugene tells him coldly that he can believe what he wants, but he guarantees that not a single drop of blood will touch him. At last, they reach the busy city market, full of shouting vendors and customers haggling over goods. Eugene notices a merchant arguing with a customer about prices and the quality of the items. Miran flies happily among the crowd, while Vilide warns Eugene to be careful. He explains that merchants often cheat strangers, charging them high prices, and even the village chief was tricked before. They watch a quarrel where a customer demands a refund because another shop sells the same item at half the price. Eugene realizes that before worrying about safety, he needs money. He asks Vilide to wait and enters a shop. There, he offers to sell some rare black wolf skins, asking the merchant to set a price. The merchant is surprised to see such a large number of rare skins. He notices Eugene's shabby clothes and assumes he is just a wanderer, not a trader. Smiling maliciously, he offers a very low price of 18 silver pieces, claiming the skins are damaged. Eugene stares at the merchant with glowing red eyes, terrifying him. The merchant stammers and admits that wolf skins are rare and adjusts the price slightly. Eugene silently threatens him by approaching closely, making the merchant nervous. He laughs nervously and raises the price to 23 pieces, thinking Eugene is still dissatisfied. As Eugene hums quietly, the merchant increases it again to 25, then 27, and finally 28 pieces, leaving Vilide amazed. Eugene presses with a louder voice, and the terrified merchant asks how much this monster wants. At last, the price settles at 30 silver pieces, the maximum the merchant can pay, and Eugene agrees. Eugene leaves the shop with new, elegant clothes. Looking at a written sign, he realizes the letters still appear like worms to him, even though Vilide had taught him the basics. Miran comments that his new clothes look decent and probably cost enough. Eugene describes the merchant as generous, but Miran mocks him, saying the merchant was just easy to trick. Her eyes shine with greed as she notices the 30 silver coins, and she scolds Eugene for not pushing the merchant to sell more expensive silk, calling it a missed opportunity. Eugene calmly explains that he only needed the clothes to cover his body fully and protect himself from sunlight. Miran teases him, mocking his dull, cautious lifestyle, saying he should enjoy life more instead of hiding. She begins to tell him her visions of noble vampires, living in luxurious castles, wearing silk, and drinking fresh blood from wine goblets, emphasizing that ambition is necessary to rise in the world. Eugene is surprised by her knowledge, considering she lived in a swamp. Miran explains that she is originally from the spirit world and learned many stories from elders who traveled to the human world, bringing back priceless wisdom. She advises Eugene on the importance of learning the imperial language and ancient runes, saying that since he may live at least 200 years unless killed, he must learn everything. Eugene suddenly asks Miran if she can read, and she answers honestly, saying no. Later that night, while Eugene sits by the campfire, Vilide approaches him hesitantly. Nervously, he interrupts Eugene's conversation with Miran, asking about the person he was just talking to, as he saw no one else. Eugene quickly saves the situation by saying he was just talking to himself. He then changes the topic and asks the boy how his stomach feels after vomiting earlier. Vilide immediately apologizes for that embarrassing moment. He explains that watching Eugene skin the rabbit for food reminded him of the massacre in the morning, which made him feel sick. Miran comments that it was too much for the boy to handle, while Eugene calmly reassures him that normal people cannot easily get used to seeing dead bodies. Vilide decides not to waste the time and says he still has energy since the night is long. He happily offers to teach Eugene how to write because they still have extra paper, clearly pleased to be useful. The night lesson begins, and Vilide is shocked by how fast Eugene understands everything. He wonders in amazement if learning letters is usually this easy. With honest admiration, he tells Eugene that he learned in one night what normally takes months. Eugene humbly tells him that the praise is too much. Eugene then seriously wonders whether learning just a little reading will be enough for Vilai, who is about to become a noble's son overnight. Vilai admits it still doesn't feel real to him. His mother never told him the full story, and he never thought deeply about it before. With a sad smile and clear tension, he adds that he doesn't even expect Sir Terwin to welcome him kindly. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted when a group of horsemen and armed men come out from between the trees. A man with gentle features and a light beard steps forward and greets them politely. He explains that they are having trouble finding a place to camp and asks if they can share the spot. Eugene carefully examines them and notices their high-quality weapons, armor, and disciplined formation. He immediately understands they are not ordinary bandits. These are real mercenaries, completely different from the desperate men he killed earlier. Their leader notices the child with Eugene and asks where they are headed. Eugene thinks quickly. He realizes the question is asked in a professional manner, and a careless lie might make things worse. So he chooses to tell the truth and says they are traveling to Lord Terwin's castle. The leader, Bardic, smiles brightly and says they are going to the same place. He offers to share food, drinks, and meat in exchange for camping together. Before things can settle, a young blonde mercenary named Robin rudely interrupts, complaining about sharing the place with strangers. Captain Bardic immediately apologizes to Eugene for Robin's behavior, explaining that he recently joined the group and hasn't learned discipline yet. He asks Eugene to forgive the outburst. Bardic then introduces himself properly, and Eugene responds by introducing himself as Knight Jan Eugene. The blonde soldier reacts with mockery, repeating the word knight in a sarcastic tone. Robin bursts into laughter and asks Eugene what part of him looks like a knight, pointing out that he has no horse and wears no armor. Robin steps closer, challenging him to be honest and admit that he isn't a real knight. He rudely pokes Eugene in the chest with his finger, claiming he has never heard of any noble family named Eugene. Robin's expression twists into a sly, almost demonic smile as he accuses Eugene of being a fraud. Eugene stares at him with cold, glowing red eyes. He realizes he has already told Vilai that he is a knight, so he cannot retreat or change his story now. Calmly, Eugene analyzes the situation. He understands that the mercenaries approached them for another reason and that whether he is truly a knight is not their main concern. However, he knows that if the doubt continues, the situation will turn dangerous. Under his cloak, Eugene grips the handle of his sword, quickly counting their numbers and judging that he could kill them all if necessary. Captain Bardic senses the killing intent and feels the sudden change in the air. He immediately shouts firmly at his reckless subordinate. In a flash, Bardic steps forward and punches Robin hard in the face before things go any further. Eugene watches calmly as Robin's body is sent flying through the air and crashes violently onto the ground. Bardic quickly moves to apologize to Eugene in a respectful tone, asking him to forgive Robin's insolence and lack of discipline. Eugene accepts the apology calmly, his confidence cold and controlled, instructing them to hold their positions. While Bardic thanks him for his patience and mercy, Eugene internally realizes that suspicions will continue to grow. To avoid unnecessary attention, he decides he must embrace the role of a knight fully and prove it as soon as possible. Away from Eugene, Bardic sits beside Robin, who is still unconscious. Robin wakes with a start, confused and shocked about why he was struck so harshly. Bardic scolds him, calling him a mindless fool, and shouts angrily about how he dared to attack a knight without fear, almost bringing death upon all of them. He slaps Robin on the head again, emphasizing that they had nearly died because of his recklessness. Robin protests, dismissing Eugene as a shabby-looking man with a short sword. Bardic immediately calls him out, saying he judged only by appearances and is too short-sighted to see even 2 steps ahead. He asks Robin to estimate the price of Eugene's cloak, explaining it's crafted from high-quality lyanthrop leather, and even the cheapest cloak of that kind would cost over 10 silver coins. Robin's jaw drops. He realizes the cloak alone is worth 3 months of his salary. Bardic continues, noting that Eugene was reading a letter, which proves he is educated and cannot be a mere commoner. He delivers the terrifying truth. Eugene already had his right hand inside his cloak, gripping his weapon, with his left foot slightly back, a stance only an expert would take to distribute balance perfectly for a deadly strike. Bardic explains that if he had delayed by even a second, Robin's head would have rolled on the ground. Robin nervously argues that Bardic could have blocked it, but Bardic looks at him with cold seriousness. He explains the reality of knights. They train with wooden swords from birth in noble families, dedicating their entire lives to mastering the art of killing. They dive into dungeons without hesitation, pierce monsters without blinking, fighting, and carve their glory and status by cutting down enemies on battlefields. Only those with hands stained by massive amounts of blood earn the recognition to become knights. Impersonating a knight is a major crime, Bartek says, and claiming it so boldly means Eugene must be either insane or supremely confident in his own power. Anyone who dares to present themselves as a knight and survive to tell it is certainly someone with extraordinary skill. Robin, sweating in fear, asks if Eugene could be stronger than Bartek himself. Bartek, tense but honest, admits it is likely. Bartek concludes that Eugene's mention of heading to Lord Terwin's castle, possibly due to a newly discovered dungeon, means they will inevitably meet again. Eugene, hidden in the shadows, watches everything with a sly smile, realizing the title of knight carries immense weight and influence, perfectly aiding his plan. At the same time, he knows he must prepare further to master this role convincingly. Strategically analyzing the group, Eugene notes that aside from the rookie he knocked down, the rest are competent and respected mercenaries, which raises a careful, calculating concern in his mind. Eugene's mind races as he wonders why the Tyan family would hire lowlifes like the mercenaries he killed earlier when they clearly had the resources to employ trained professionals like Bartek's group, or even send their own private soldiers. Something about the situation feels off, a missing link in the puzzle he can't ignore. Suspicion gnaws at him, and he resolves to uncover the secret behind it. As Eugene approaches the mercenaries, Robin's nerves get the better of him. Why are you coming this way, he stammers. Eugene flashes a bright, confident smile, revealing his face, and casually mentions he heard they are also heading to Lord Tyan's castle. With a smooth, friendly tone, he suggests traveling together, exploiting the coincidence for his own advantage. Robin, stunned by Eugene's sudden handsomeness and easy charisma, agrees almost involuntarily, stammering praise at how striking he looks. Even Bartek, the seasoned leader, can't hide his astonishment. The convoy soon reaches Martila, a bustling village in the Twin Territory, alive with merchants and townsfolk going about their business. Eugene moves through the crowded streets with his face partially hidden, relieved that the mercenaries bought his story, that he is a knight, granting him a golden opportunity to observe and gather information during their shared journey. Miran suddenly appears beside him, floating with curiosity and excitement. Lord Eugene, she teases, what will happen next? She informs him she eavesdropped on the mercenaries, as per his orders. Eugene, eyes sharp, asks if she picked up anything useful. Miran relays crucial information. Lord Tyan's health is failing rapidly, he could die at any moment, possibly even tomorrow. She adds that a new dungeon was recently discovered on his lands, rumored to contain immense wealth, but the Tyan family lacks the money and manpower to exploit it. Eugene's interest is immediately piqued at the mention of the dungeon. Miran's tone turns anxious as she raises a pressing question. What will happen to the boy Vilide if Lord Tyan dies? Will he be left orphaned again as soon as he arrives? Eugene answers with icy detachment that the matter does not concern him. Miran erupts in frustration, screaming at his cold passivity and warning that the boy could easily be killed in the coming conflict over the inheritance. Eugene watches Vilide, silent and observant, and quietly deduces the real reason behind Lord Tyan summoning his illegitimate son now. He simply wishes to see his child one last time. Eugene realizes that from this point forward, both his fate and the boy's are about to change, one way or another. Finally, the convoy reaches its destination. Rose Castle rises before them, massive and imposing, its grandeur far exceeding Eugene's expectations. Miran hovers in awe, gushing about the luxury and advising him to climb the social ranks quickly so he too can enjoy life in such a castle. Eugene cuts her off sharply, telling her to stop the nonsense and move inside. Vilide watches him with wide eyes, surprised at his audacity and composure. At the main gate, a stern guard demands identification and the reason for their visit. Bartek steps forward confidently, claiming that his group is mercenaries commissioned by the Balan Merchant Guild. The guard presses further, asking about the rest of the party, but before Bartek can answer, a young blonde man with arrogant features intervenes. He introduces himself as Kamar, the eldest son and heir of the Tyan family. Coldly, he asks whether the carriage behind them contains their goods. Bartek confirms delivery, prompting Kamar to bark orders for them to begin unloading immediately. Kamar notices Eugene standing apart from the workers, silent and observing. With a sharp, condescending tone, he questions Eugene directly, "And you, what is your identity, and why are you standing idle instead of helping?" The air grows tense, and Eugene realizes that the next move will be critical, not just to maintain his cover as a knight, but to assert control over the unfolding situation in Lord Tyan's castle. Eugene steps forward with calm authority, introducing himself as Knight Jan Eugene and pointing to Vilai. "This child is under my care," he states firmly. Before anyone can respond, a commanding voice cuts through the air, scolding Kamar. Eugene freezes mid-step, instantly recognizing the voice, his eyes narrowing beneath his mask. Annoyance flashes across Kamar's face. From the shadows, a knight in shining armor and a flowing red cloak steps forward, his tone strict and unyielding. "I've told you countless times, brother, inspecting strangers is my duty as a castle guard," he says, eyes locking on Eugene. Under the mask, Eugene's features harden, his mind thrown back to the torturous past where he first encountered this man, the relentless hunter who discovered him hiding, the one who had tortured and pursued him alongside young Dirt. The knight in red is Bertil Taeon, second son of the Taeon family and the family's direct knight. He glares at his older brother, Kamar, demanding to know why he's out here. Kamar shoots him a sarcastic glance, teasing that Bertil seems to act as if he were the true heir. Bertil's face tightens in annoyance, denying such intentions. Eugene interrupts sharply, sliding a letter forward. "This comes from Chief Jeb of Broadwind Village," he announces, eyes fixed on Bertil. Bertil reaches for the letter instinctively, surprise flashing across his features at the mention of Broadwind, but Eugene pulls it back, handing it instead to Kamar. Kamar reads the letter, his eyes widening in shock as the truth sinks in. The mercenaries sent to the village were completely wiped out, and the child with Eugene is revealed to be the family's illegitimate son. Vilai steps forward cautiously, introducing himself. Kamar's expression softens into a practiced smile, welcoming the boy as his new brother, while Bertil's gaze remains cold and piercing. Kamar speaks warmly to the boy, saying, "Our father misses you very much." Bertil, meanwhile, barked orders to the servants, demanding that Vilai be cleaned and dressed in proper clothing. Vilai glances nervously at Eugene, unsure of what will happen next. Before the servants can move, Eugene steps in decisively. "The reward will be discussed first," he declares, and insists on conditions to meet Lord Taeon personally. Bertil's eyes flash with anger. "That's impossible," he shouts. He explains that their father's health is precarious and offers to pay Eugene in gold if he leaves immediately. Eugene's red eyes glint beneath the mask, and the silent threat in his stance makes clear that he will not leave without his demands met. Kamar quickly interjects, trying to mediate. Bertil explodes at him, the tension between the brothers laying bare the deep rift. Kamar insists that the new brother must be introduced to their father regardless, while Bertil argues it is impossible. The man before them is a wanderer of unknown origin, and their father cannot be disturbed even for an hour. The argument escalates, voices sharp and heated, each brother accusing the other of manipulation and deceit. Finally, Kamar turns to Eugene, forcing a polite, apologetic smile. "I'm sorry my brother makes things difficult," he says, placing a hand on Eugene's shoulder with feigned kindness. "Please, return home safely this time." Eugene's eyes glint beneath the mask, silently weighing the power struggle before him, knowing he has not yet played his final move. Eugene leads Vilai through the castle, his piercing eyes scanning everything. "I'll guide you personally," he tells the boy, who follows quietly, resigned to Eugene's authority. As they move through the courtyard, Eugene notes how the family had clearly no intention of letting him meet Lord Taeon directly. Suddenly, the ground shakes with a tremendous impact, drawing everyone's attention. A massive shadow falls before Bertil, and a huge, muscular man with striking red hair appears, effortlessly carrying several unconscious men over his shoulder. A savage grin spreads across his face. "I've been looking for you all for a long time," he growls, dropping the bodies in front of the stunned brothers and Eugene. "These are the mercenaries who were looting villages instead of training as ordered," he explains, voice thick with menace. The man, Galactic, suggests executing one of them as an example, his tone dripping with bloodlust. Eugene watches carefully, noting the tension in the air. Bertil intervenes firmly, cutting off Galactic's cruelty, stating that the mercenaries will be disciplined later and proposing they enter the castle to speak privately. Galactic agrees without protest. Outside the castle, Bardic leans toward Eugene, lowering his voice. "Do you know who that is?" he asks. Eugene shakes his head subtly. Bardic explains in admiration that the red-haired giant is Sir Gallic, a knight who recently placed third in the prestigious Evergrove tournament, displaying monstrous strength and unmatched skill. He recounts how Gallic swept through over 1,000 competitors with ease, speculating that his appearance here is tied to the newly discovered dungeon. Bardic points out that conquering a dungeon first brings immense fame and glory, and knights often use such feats as stepping stones to higher titles and knighthood in influential families. Eugene mutters the word knighthood under his breath, already considering his next strategic move. He glances at Bardic. "Your current contract ends today," he reminds him, smiling mysteriously beneath his mask. Bartik confirms, and Eugene subtly hints at making a new request, leaving Bartik intrigued. Meanwhile, inside the castle, Kumar watches Bertel punish the mercenaries with a dark intensity. He realizes that Bertel's bringing a formidable knight like Gallic signals his brother's intention to claim glory by opening the dungeon first. Public opinion and the support of influential figures would swing entirely in Bertel's favor, putting Kumar's position at severe risk. Helpless and frustrated, Kumar struggles to find a solution, knowing he cannot simply hire inexperienced fighters to match such power. Kumar's thoughts are interrupted when his servant announces that Sir Eugene wishes to meet him. Recognition and curiosity spark in Kumar's eyes. He recalls that this is the knight who escorted Vilai and immediately orders him to be brought in. The door opens, and Eugene enters with his usual commanding presence. Kumar rises slightly, greeting him as Sir Eugene. "Do not worry about Vilai," Kumar says with practiced politeness, attempting to preempt Eugene's concerns. "His safety has my full attention. Sit, rest assured that my father will grant your reward once he wakes." Eugene's red eyes glint beneath his mask as he carefully observes Kumar, weighing the balance of power and plotting his next move in this delicate web of intrigue. Eugene's calm and calculated demeanor leaves a lasting impression on Kumar. The eldest son of the Tyan family first remarks how grateful he is that Eugene handed the letter to him in front of Bertel, noting that it allowed him to hold his head high before his rival brother. Eugene offers a polite, modest smile, but quickly shifts his tone, pointing out that stepping into the Tyan family's internal affairs as a third party is a delicate and puzzling matter. Kumar leans forward, eyes narrowing with curiosity. "What brings you here? Are you looking to meet my father and check on his condition?" he asks. Eugene confirms this is true, but adds that he also wishes to make a special offer to Lord Kumar himself. With a piercing gaze, Eugene lays out his proposition. He wants to join the dungeon subjugation squad. Kumar bursts out laughing, unable to contain his extreme sarcasm. Tears of mirth stream down his face as he mocks Eugene, asking incredulously whether he is even a knight. He brings up rumors he's heard, that Eugene single-handedly killed 5 bandits, and questions whether his sudden interest in the squad is just a stunt to bolster his reputation. "Why should I indulge this absurdity?" Kumar scoffs. Eugene remains perfectly confident, his sly smile never faltering. He explains the details of his offer with cold precision: 100 silver coins for himself and his mercenaries, and only half the byproducts from the dungeon, excluding any magic stones from his share. Kumar's laughter dies, replaced by a mix of suspicion and contemplation. The offer is absurdly low compared to market value, yet Eugene's expression exudes assurance. Eugene leans slightly forward, his tone sharp. "The one in a hurry here isn't me, Lord Kumar. It's you." His words cut through the tension like a blade. He clarifies once more, the reward is modest, the byproducts fair, and the magic stones are deliberately excluded because they are costly to purify and process. The rest of the loot, sold immediately, ensures fast and practical profit. Kumar studies Eugene carefully. His appearance suggests a wandering knight with no noble backing, someone who lives for honor, not wealth. The meager offer suddenly makes sense. This is a man who values skill and strategy over material gain. Kumar's mind races as he realizes Eugene isn't just a strong knight. He's cunning, perceptive, and capable of manipulating situations to his advantage. The admiration grows in Kumar's chest. Finally, Kumar extends his hand with a firm smile. "Very well, Sir Eugene. I see no reason to refuse such a favorable offer. I look forward to working with you." Eugene accepts the handshake with an equally confident smile. Meanwhile, Eugene has already thought ahead. He instructed Bartik to introduce him to a trusted merchant guild to handle the sale of the byproducts efficiently, ensuring that everything is both profitable and manageable. Bartik agrees with a broad, approving smile, impressed by Eugene's foresight. The scene shifts. Galedic loudly declares that a dungeon is not a playground for children. As he says this, he waves his dagger in the air in a threatening way. He clearly announces the strict rules he follows inside the dungeon. According to him, the only things that exist there are life and death. If someone falls behind even once, that person will die right where they stand. With these words, he firmly rejects anyone who has half-trained skills, saying such weakness would only slow everyone down. Bertel responds with clear disdain, saying that his expectations were already low because this knight was brought in by his brother, Kamar. Thinking that his brother does not have good relationships with neighboring nobles and also lacks a wide network of connections, Bertel tells Alfred that if they run out of options, Alfred should personally handle the new knight. This suggestion surprises the knight. At that moment, Kamar enters the meeting room. He apologizes for being late in gathering everyone together, explaining that he was talking with the new knight. With a slightly forced smile, Kamar formally introduces Eugene and announces that he has joined the subjugation squad. Eugene quietly walks in behind Kamar, accompanied by Bardak's mercenary squad. Bertel carefully examines Eugene and the mercenaries with him. He recalls that this is the same man who was leading the shabby-looking mercenary group he had seen earlier. Then Bertel steps in and raises an objection with a cold smile. He says that, with all due respect, they cannot accept someone whose background and abilities are completely unconfirmed. Kamar answers confidently, saying that he can at least guarantee Eugene's skill. Meanwhile, Bertel and Dick watch the situation with doubtful expressions. Kamar then reminds everyone about the bandit group that had been causing serious trouble along the border of the territory, a problem they had failed to solve for a long time. He reveals his final trump card by saying that Sir Eugene wiped out that entire bandit group using only a single short sword on his way here. He then asks if this level of skill is enough to convince them. Suddenly, without any warning, a dagger flies toward Eugene at lightning speed. Eugene calmly and skillfully deflects the dagger. The blade crashes violently into the wooden wall behind him and pierces straight through it. Everyone watches this scene in shock and amazement. Dick then appears with a savage smile and says, "All right, then." Dick offers an apology filled with obvious sarcasm for his rude words during their first meeting. However, he follows it with a hidden insult, commenting that Eugene's pale skin and lack of a tan make it look like he grew up in comfort and was overly pampered. Dick steps forward and stands at his full height in front of Eugene. His eyes shine with a clear challenge as he provocatively asks Eugene if he would like to show them his skills, mockingly calling him young master. Outside, the news spreads rapidly. People gather in the square, shouting in excitement that Sir Dick is dueling someone. Everyone turns their attention toward the castle square, eagerly waiting to see the skills of the knight who took third place in the grand tournament. The crowd whispers in fear and admiration about Dick's legendary strength. They say he can tear monsters apart with his bare hands and wonder in shock if he is even human. In front of this human monster, Eugene stands completely calm. One person in the crowd even says he is starting to feel sorry for him. Dick pulls out his massive sword with a confident and provocative smile. Eugene draws his own sword and copies Dick's stance. The referee loudly announces the start of the duel, and the bells ring, marking the beginning of the fight. Dick charges forward at incredible speed. The swords crash into each other, sending sparks flying through the air. A series of violent and fast attacks follows. Eugene skillfully blocks Dick's heavy strikes, and fragments scatter from the force of their clashes. Dick smiles with wild enjoyment and urges Eugene to face him properly. The storm of attacks continues. Under the pressure of Eugene's relentless blows, Dick is forced to step back, trying to absorb the power behind each strike. The mercenaries watch the duel in amazement. A rookie soldier wonders out loud if Dick is being pushed back without putting up a fight. However, Commander Bardak calmly corrects him, explaining that Dick is not losing. He is simply testing his opponent and trying to understand Eugene's fighting style. Eugene continues his wide, sweeping attacks, believing that he is fully controlling the flow of the battle. However, Dick is allowing this to happen on purpose. During these moments, Dick carefully studies his opponent's fighting style. He quickly realizes that Eugene's swordsmanship is much rougher and more chaotic than he first expected. Eugene does not follow any fixed pattern and has no clear habits in his movements, which makes it very hard to predict what he will do next. Dick concludes that this is not a style refined through proper training. Instead, it is the savage fighting style of someone who grew up surviving in harsh conditions, relying purely on instinct. Eugene notices the sharp, analyzing look in Dick's eyes. In response, Dick gives a mocking smile and directly accuses Eugene of lying about being a knight. Dick skillfully exposes the truth. He describes Eugene's swordsmanship as brutal and his stance as awkward. He states that Eugene has no formal training and depends only on his unnatural physical strength. He adds that being a knight is about more than just swinging a sword, but admits that exchanging only a few blows was enough for him to see through Eugene completely. Eugene decides to answer in action rather than words. words. He attacks Galedic again and tells him that he talks too much. Galedic blocks the attack with a crazed smile and taunts Eugene, telling him to defeat him if he really wants him to shut up. The speed of the fight increases rapidly, and the arena turns into a violent storm of clashing swords and exchanged strikes. Galedic delivers a devastating blow with his sword, and Eugene tries to block it. The collision of their power creates a massive explosion of force, sending up a thick cloud of dust that blocks everyone's view. The crowd erupts into loud cheers. Burl smiles confidently, thinking that Eugene must have been knocked unconscious by that crushing strike. Suddenly, from within the swirling dust, a terrifying red eye shines brightly. Eugene bursts out with lightning speed, lunging forward. Galedic blocks the attack, but he is filled with shock as he realizes that Eugene is learning and improving at an incredible rate during the fight itself. The two warriors exchange a rapid series of deadly attacks. Eugene now begins to match Galedic's savage fighting style. A powerful clash follows, and with a loud crack, both of their swords shatter. At the same time, both fighters throw away their broken weapons. They move in close, locking hands as their faces come inches apart, silently challenging each other. Galedic laughs in disbelief, wondering how Eugene can possess such overwhelming strength despite having a much smaller body than his own. Galedic stares directly into Eugene's eye and admits the unavoidable truth inside his heart. Eugene's raw physical power is far greater than his own. However, Galedic also realizes that while Eugene surpasses him in strength, he himself still holds an absolute advantage in combat experience. With deep focus, Galedic shifts his stance, preparing to use that experience to turn the fight around. Galedic charges forward with a wide, sweeping attack. Eugene dodges it effortlessly with incredible flexibility, causing Galedic's strike to cut through empty air. Galedic continues his ruthless assault, trying to crush Eugene with his massive strength, while Eugene lightly evades each attack. In the middle of this intense exchange, Eugene notices a small opening in Galedic's defense. He prepares to strike back. At that moment, Galedic realizes something shocking. Eugene's movements are not precise like those taught through long training. Instead, they are quick adaptations and emergency reactions driven purely by survival instinct. Before Galedic can fully understand this realization, Eugene suddenly lands a powerful punch straight to his face. Galedic is left in awe, wondering where this mysterious fighter came from. In that very exchange, Galedic admits his defeat to himself as Eugene's fist connects. The punch sends Galedic's massive body flying through the air with terrifying force. His body slams violently into the back wall of the arena, causing heavy destruction and filling the area with dust. The referee announces the end of the duel in a shaking voice, declaring Knight Jan Eugene as the winner. Eugene stands there, breathing heavily, while the crowd buzzes with shock and disbelief. No one can believe that an unknown knight possesses such insane strength, strong enough to defeat Galedic. Eugene's mercenaries burst into loud laughter, filled with pride, pointing at him and declaring that this powerful man is their leader and their knight. Amid the broken debris, Galedic slowly opens his eyes and stares up at the sky. Galedic slowly gets back on his feet. Everyone's eyes turn toward him, filled with anticipation and fear, wondering what he will do after losing the duel. Galedic walks toward Eugene with heavy steps, while Eugene remains alert and on guard. Suddenly, Galedic grabs Eugene's hand and lifts it high into the air. He loudly asks the audience to give a round of applause for tonight's winner. This action completely surprises Eugene. The crowd erupts with overwhelming cheers. They loudly chant the name, Jan Eugene, and the sound echoes throughout the entire castle. Bertel watches this scene closely. His face shows shock mixed with tightly held anger as he struggles to accept this unexpected outcome. The scene then shifts inside the castle. Eugene is sitting in front of a luxurious dining table filled with food. The servants inform him that they received very strict orders from Master Kamar. One servant explains that Kamar insisted Eugene must eat properly and rest well to prepare for the opening of the dungeon. Because of this, they are ordered to carefully supervise every meal he eats. The servant then stands quietly, waiting for Eugene's opinion on the lighting and his choice of wine. At that moment, the fairy Miran whispers mockingly, saying how troublesome the situation is since they cannot tell humans that vampires do not need food. Miran jokingly wonders if Eugene will get a stomach ache if he eats all of this. Hearing this, Eugene decides to act quickly. He suddenly grabs his stomach and pretends to be in pain. The servants look at him in shock and worry as he acts like he has fallen ill. Eugene shouts at them to leave, saying that from now on, he will take care of his meals by himself. Miran thinks to himself that Eugene should tell Kumar he prefers staying alone because he lived in isolation in the mountains for decades and is used to it. The next day, everyone's attitude toward Eugene completely changes. Kumar greets him warmly with a wide smile, calling him the capable knight Jan Eugene and asking if he slept well. Kumar laughs awkwardly and says that he noticed Eugene refused all the comforts and services he had sent him. Suddenly, Rabin bursts into the place with a loud voice. Eugene looks clearly annoyed by this noisy interruption so early in the morning. At the same time, Galedic suddenly jumps toward Eugene and tries to hug him, calling him a friend and comrade. Eugene pushes him away coldly and tells him not to cling to him like that. Galedic cheerfully asks if Eugene slept well. He then complains jokingly that his face is still throbbing in pain because of Eugene's punch, saying he could not sleep properly all night because of it. He points at his swollen face covered in bruises and laughs loudly, asking Eugene mockingly if he can see these marks. Eugene thinks to himself that Galedic sounds like he wants to get beaten again. Galedic excitedly suggests having another sparring match today since the weather is nice. Soldiers and mercenaries quickly gather around, demanding to watch the fight. This puts Eugene in an awkward position. Eugene thinks to himself that Galedic does not care whether he is a real knight or not. He also notices that other people's suspicions about him are disappearing one by one, which is exactly what he wanted. Still, he is not used to so many people crowding around him. Galedic continues provoking him playfully. Eugene says it looks like Galedic is asking for another punch. Galedic replies confidently that they will never know the result unless they try. Suddenly, the boy Vilide appears behind them. His face shows clear signs of torture, and Eugene immediately notices him. Vilide asks in a weak voice whether Eugene has been okay all this time. The scene then shifts to the past, inside a torture chamber. A man wearing torn clothes screams desperately, begging his master to show mercy and forgive him. Bertel Tyan stands over the man with cold and cruel eyes. The man lies on the ground, bleeding heavily. Bertel scolds him sharply, saying that if he had done his job properly, none of this chaos would have happened. Bertel directly blames him, stating that if the boy had been killed in that cursed village from the very beginning, the red-eyed knight would never have reached Rose Castle. Bertel's eyes glow with a frightening blue light as he shouts in suppressed rage. He says that his plans would have gone perfectly without any obstacles if not for this miserable failure. The trembling subordinate tries to defend himself. He claims that the mercenary group he hired was supposed to be reliable. However, he says they were nothing but fools who were wiped out by black wolves. So, Bertel mocks the subordinate for not checking the matter himself before making the request. Bertel then grabs the subordinate's face with brutal strength and asks him in a sadistic tone whether the eyes in his head are only for decoration. As the subordinate trembles in fear, Bertel coldly decides that if those eyes are useless, it would be better to gouge them out. The subordinate screams in pain and terror as Bertel carries out his threat. After finishing, Bertel calmly asks what he should do now to fix the situation. Bertel realizes that he cannot kill someone who has already entered the castle and is now publicly visible. However, a demonic idea soon flashes through his mind. He looks at Vilide's body lying on the ground and mutters that this method would be the only way, and it would clean up the body nicely as well. His words clearly hint at a plan to get rid of the boy inside the dungeon. The scene shifts back to Eugene and Vilide. Eugene quickly and logically figures out that Bertel was the one who ordered the boy to join the dungeon subjugation squad that is about to begin. Vilide sits alone in his room in despair, admitting that he came here ready to die. He bitterly wonders if he was sent to the dungeon only to meet his end. Eugene then reminds him about the mercenary attack on the village. He reveals the shocking truth that those low-class mercenaries were sent by one of Vilide's own brothers. Eugene clearly tells the boy that they never intended for him to reach the castle alive. This truth deepens Vilide's fear and hopelessness. However, Eugene steps closer and looks at him sharply, telling him that there is one way to survive this unavoidable fate. He offers a simple yet brilliant solution. All Vilide has to do is become Eugene's squire. The stunned boy listens as Eugene explains that Vilide has already turned 16 and completed his coming-of-age ceremony. This means he no longer needs approval from any guardian and can choose his own path in life. Eugene then presents him with two clear choices, leaving no third option. Either he stays where he is now, frozen in fear, waiting for others to kill him, or he chooses to fight and struggle until his very last breath. The day of the dungeon opening finally arrives. The subjugation squad stands in front of the enormous gate, which is tightly sealed with heavy chains. Since the dungeon has not been opened yet, no one knows what kind of monsters will come out. Galedic takes command and begins explaining the plan based on the size of the gate. He says they are likely to face low-rank monsters such as goblins and kobolds, as well as mid-rank monsters like trolls and spiders. He warns everyone that high-rank monsters are unpredictable and orders an immediate retreat if one appears. Galedic then commands the team to search the dungeon tunnels first. In the back, the porters whisper among themselves, feeling relieved that they are only porters. They quietly hope that their blood will not be spilled this time. One porter secretly plans to fake an injury and stay behind once the weak monsters are dealt with. However, his fellow porter calls him a fool. He explains that the first dungeon raids are always brutal and that no one cares about the rear lines. He says it is not worth dying like a stray dog for just a few coins. The cowardly porter suggests that they should run away if things go badly. Suddenly, he receives a hard blow from behind. Bertel Tyan appears among the porters with a terrifying expression. He asks them where that bastard Vilide is, reminding them that he clearly assigned him to this position among the porters. The porter looks confused and suspiciously asks if Bertel is talking about that kid Vilide, pointing toward him. Bertel then turns his head and sees Vilide standing there, handing Eugene a small bag of snacks. Vilide gently asks Eugene to return safely, and Eugene calmly answers that he will. Bertel rushes toward them, shouting angrily. He calls Vilide a rat who sneaked in and insults Eugene as a ruthless barbarian. Bertel screams directly into Vilide's face, scolding him for wasting time here. In a cruel and commanding tone, he orders him to pick up his bag and go to his assigned position immediately without any delay. When Vilide does not respond right away, Bertel storms forward and tries to grab him, wondering if the boy has gone deaf. Eugene watches closely as Bertel reaches out, shouting orders for Vilide to move. At that moment, a strong hand suddenly stops Bertel's movement. Bertel looks down in shock at his halted arm and sees Eugene gripping his wrist firmly. Eugene speaks sharply to Bertel, condemning his attempt to send a boy who has never held anything sharper than a kitchen knife into a dungeon filled with monsters. Eugene asks him in a chilling tone, his eyes shining from beneath his mask, whether he has lost his mind. Bertel angrily shakes off Eugene's hand and calls him insolent. He falsely claims that he only wants to make his brother stronger. Bertel tries to assert his authority, ordering Eugene to know his place and saying that he has no right to give orders concerning this child. Eugene cuts him off coldly and replies that he believes Bertel is the one who does not know his place here. Then Eugene drops a shocking announcement. He declares that as of yesterday, this child has officially become his squire and shield bearer. Bertel is completely stunned. Eugene raises his voice and states clearly that everyone present is a witness to this. He explains firmly that the bond between a knight and his squire is stronger than blood itself. He directly warns Bertel that if he dares to touch even a single hair on the boy's head, Eugene will treat it as a direct challenge against him. Eugene steps closer to Bertel's face with open defiance. With sarcasm mixed with clear threat, he suggests that they should warm up their bodies a little before entering the dungeon. Bertel stammers and steps back in fear, asking who gave Eugene permission to act this way. He argues that taking in a bastard from another family is not a simple matter and claims that this decision could completely ruin the boy's future. At the same time, Bertel overhears some warriors talking among themselves. They say the dungeon will be safe with strong people like Eugene and Galedic leading the front, not just knights in name only. One of them mentions the incredible duel they witnessed, while another replies bitterly that he would need an entire second lifetime of training to ever reach their level. Kumar suddenly steps in with a forced smile. He says that he too can entrust his brother to Sir Eugene. He supports his stance by pointing out that the boy is already an adult who has completed his coming-of-age ceremony, meaning he has the right to choose his own path. Bertel glares at them all with pure malice. Inside his mind, Eugene thinks about how Vilide has become prey. Once the weak are marked by a predator, survival becomes extremely difficult. Even if the weak hide and hold their breath, the predator will eventually track them down and tear out their throat. Eugene sees this truth clearly in Bertel's treacherous gaze. He remembers the advice he gave Vilide earlier, that if he cannot become strong on his own, then he must form a pack to survive. Soon, the scout delivers his report, stating that there are no wandering monsters nearby and none escaping from the dungeon tunnels. Galedic smiles with wild excitement and announces that they can finally open the dungeon. He gives the signal to move forward, and the massive gate begins to open slowly. As the gate opens, the terrifying darkness of the dungeon is revealed. Soldiers shout with excitement, declaring the start of the raid. Gale Dick turns back toward those behind him and delivers his final words before entering, telling them that they must survive on their own. With loud battle cries, the squad rushes into the dungeon, marking the beginning of the assault. Echoing in their minds are the farewell words from Kamar and Vilai at the gate. They wish everyone safety and divine protection, promising to meet them again in 4 days. But the reality inside the dungeon is a living hell. Monsters suddenly rain down from the ceiling onto the soldiers. Panic spreads instantly. Blood splatters everywhere, and one soldier screams desperately for help. Gale Dick rushes forward with his massive sword and splits a monster in two, trying to regain control of the situation. He roars angrily at the panicking soldiers, calling them idiots and demanding that they maintain their battle formation properly. Gale Dick orders the archers in the center to return to their positions, cover the ceiling, and fire arrows. He warns everyone not to let the monsters break through their ranks and destroy the formation. Fear overwhelms one soldier, who deeply regrets volunteering for what now feels like a suicide mission. Realizing that his worst fears have come true and that this whole plan was madness from the beginning, he decides to run back toward the entrance to save his life. He believes this is his only chance to survive. However, he is horrified to see a pack of monsters blocking the way back. They grin at him with cruel intent. Just as despair takes hold, someone steps in to save him. Eugene appears coldly and scolds the soldier, calling him a fool for thinking that the path back would be free of monsters. Gale Dick grabs the panicked soldier roughly and shouts at him, explaining harshly that staying together with the group is the safest way to survive. He orders everyone to draw their swords and hold their positions, telling them to prepare for the incoming fight. As he looks at their poor performance, Gale Dick feels bitter. He realizes that these mercenaries are in a miserable state because they were gathered in a hurry. He wonders in frustration how he is supposed to conquer a dungeon with men like these. Things become even worse when one soldier warns him that more monsters are coming. Another soldier suddenly screams in terror, shouting that enemies are also attacking from behind. This forces Gale Dick to think quickly. He immediately orders a change in formation so they can face attacks from both directions at the same time. At that moment, Eugene steps forward and announces that he will take care of the rear guard. Gale Dick warns him about how dangerous it is to go alone, but Eugene does not hesitate. He dashes into the darkness at lightning speed. Gale Dick stands frozen in shock, amazed by Eugene's speed and his sudden, fearless decision. Soon after, terrifying sounds echo from the darkness. The noise of monsters and violent fighting fills the tunnel. Then something flies out from the shadows. Gale Dick's eyes widen in shock when he realizes that the object is Eugene's mask. Understanding that something serious is happening, Gale Dick immediately orders Bardic to cover his back and follow him without delay. Gale Dick and his men rush forward. They are stunned by how far Eugene has already gone in such a short time. Monster corpses are scattered everywhere along the path. Finally, they find Eugene standing calmly at an intersection where all the monsters have already been killed. Eugene is holding a glowing flower in his hand and asks in a flat voice whether it is expensive. Gale Dick arrives, breathing heavily. Bardic feels an inner, sarcastic disappointment because Eugene does not even recognize a common luminous herb. Gale Dick, however, is amazed by Eugene's incredible combat ability, even though he lacks knowledge of such basic things. As Eugene looks at the flower, he notices that it is already withering in his hand. After the battle ends, the wounded soldiers lie along the corridors, receiving treatment. Groans of pain and screams from severe injuries echo throughout the dungeon. Eugene's mercenaries approach him and hand over the magic stones they collected from the monsters. Eugene tells them to pile all the stones in front of him. He looks at the small number of stones in his hand and wonders if this is really all they gained after killing so many monsters. He orders his men to rest. In his mind, he notices that the magic stones here glow with a blue light, which is different from the one he previously obtained from the Wanderer. The fairy Miran appears and looks at the small magic stones with clear disappointment. She says they are underwhelming compared to high-quality stones. She explains to Eugene that the quality of a magic stone is directly related to the monster's strength and size. Eugene asks her curiously whether wild wanderers have larger stones. Miran explains that just because dungeon monsters become wanderers in the wild does not mean their stones grow stronger. However, she reminds him that the crocodile wanderer he absorbed earlier was extremely large and incredibly powerful. She tells him that such a wanderer was a rare special case, strong enough to take over even her own territory. Eugene realizes then that consuming assuming that Wanderer's red magic stone was pure luck. Miran adds that if things continue like this, entering the dungeon just to impress nobles is pointless because the rewards are too small. As she wonders aloud whether a high-rank monster might be present in this dungeon, Eugene suddenly stops moving. He has sensed something unusual. At the same time, Galedic shouts angrily at the soldiers who thought they would get a break. He orders them to return to formation immediately, declaring that break time is over. He scolds them harshly, calling them weak. Then he announces that he and Sir Eugene will take the front line. He warns that anyone who runs away without orders will pay for it later. Eugene looks at Galedic in surprise, thinking about the irony of the situation. This is his first time inside a dungeon as well, yet he is being asked to lead the charge. Still, he decides that he must step forward because the mercenaries are far less reliable than he expected. Galedic advances carefully, sensing that the monsters approaching now are on a completely different level compared to the ones they fought earlier. He signals to Eugene that the creatures that had been controlling the dungeon for a long time were likely using goblins as mere pawns. The enemies appearing now, he believes, are the true masters of the dungeon. A group of heavily armed orcs suddenly appears, confirming Galedic's judgment that the enemies they are facing are at least mid-rank monsters. From this, he immediately deduces that if they are already encountering such monsters here, then truly high-rank monsters must be waiting deeper inside the dungeon. The soldiers swallow hard, their throats dry with fear, as they realize how dangerous the situation has become. At that moment, Eugene's mind drifts back to a memory from the past. He recalls the exact moment after he devoured the Swamp Lord's red magic stone, when he gained a very important ability. His eyes begin to glow red as he wonders curiously whether devouring another similar magic stone would grant him yet another ability. Soon, he pulls himself back to reality and calmly analyzes the battlefield. Eugene speaks with precision, telling Galedic that he can hear the footsteps of more than 50 monsters approaching from about 100 meters away. He adds that there are also 3 much heavier monsters following behind them. Hearing this, Galedic smiles with fierce excitement, filled with the thrill of battle. In a challenging tone, he asks Eugene whether he wants to try attacking first this time. Without a moment of hesitation, Galedic grabs a spear and throws it with all his strength. The spear strikes a monster with overwhelming force, splitting its head open instantly. Galedic then roars loudly, ordering everyone to launch a full-scale attack while the enemies are thrown into chaos by Eugene's actions. Eugene charges forward, moving through the group of orcs at unbelievable speed. One by one, he tears their bodies apart with ruthless efficiency. Galedic shouts commands, ordering the soldiers to follow Eugene and support him. Encouraged by his presence, the soldiers respond with renewed enthusiasm. One soldier shouts to Eugene, asking whether they should join the fight directly. However, Eugene is already facing a massive orc that suddenly appears right in front of him. Eugene swiftly dodges the giant monster's attack. In the same instant, he strikes with perfect accuracy, driving his blade into the monster's eye and blinding it. As the orc screams in agony, Eugene uses the opening without hesitation. He moves smoothly and delivers another powerful strike, severing the monster's limbs. With a final, decisive motion, he plunges his sword deep into the monster's body, ending its life. Blood splashes across Eugene's face and clothes as the enormous creature collapses. On that day, the soldiers burned this scene deeply into their memories. Before their eyes, they witnessed the figure they had long admired. They see Eugene crushing his enemies with overwhelming power. To them, his fighting looks like an elegant duel, fair, direct, and filled with unwavering nobility. They believe he is a knight who never loses his dignity, completely unaware of the savage nature hidden beneath his mask. Yet at the same time, the soldiers begin to realize that what they are seeing is nothing like the knights they had known before. Instead of gentle nobility, Eugene appears more like a ferocious beast, soaked in blood and surrounded by death. His presence sends fear through both enemies and allies alike. When the battle finally ends, the soldiers collapse onto the ground, exhausted, surrounded by the corpses of orcs. Galedic notices that most of the troops have lost their will to move forward. This is not only because of physical exhaustion, but also due to the deep mental shock of witnessing Eugene's brutal way of fighting. Galedic decides silently that pushing deeper into the dungeon is impossible with the soldiers in such a broken state. He suggests to Eugene that they should return now, saying that they have already achieved the required goal and met the quota. However, Eugene turns toward him and replies coldly that he still has plenty of strength left. He says that leaving leaving now would be a waste of a rare opportunity, one that may not come again. Galedic shouts with excitement, declaring that if Eugene wants to continue, then they have no choice but to push forward with him. He tries to rally the remaining soldiers, but Eugene shocks him by giving an unexpected order. Eugene tells Galedic to lead the subjugation squad and take them out of the dungeon immediately. Eugene explains that he will continue onward from this point, accompanied only by his mercenaries. The soldiers stare at him in disbelief. In that moment, Galedic realizes the truth. Eugene sensed the soldiers' exhaustion and fear and chose to let them withdraw so they could survive. As Eugene walks away into the darkness, Galedic watches his back, feeling admiration. He understands that behind Eugene's cold and fierce exterior lies a surprisingly warm heart. Galedic becomes certain that this man has completely redefined what the word knight means to him. Eugene and his mercenaries move deeper into the dungeon, where thick spiderwebs cover the walls and ceiling. Fear grips the young soldier Raven. His hand trembles as he holds his torch, silently cursing his terrible luck and wondering why he had to come along. He tries to comfort himself by thinking that Sir Eugene can defeat even trolls on his own. He believes that as long as he stays close behind Eugene and nothing goes wrong, he might survive. Suddenly, Raven hears a disgusting cracking sound under his foot. Startled, he looks down in fear and realizes that he has stepped on a small spider. His heart sinks in horror as he understands that they have entered spider territory. At that very moment, hundreds of glowing red eyes appear in the darkness. Spiders begin to crawl out from all directions, completely surrounding them and blocking every possible escape path. Then, a giant cave spider reveals itself. This monster is known for living in large colonies. It melts its prey using strong acidic poison before slowly devouring it. Seeing this nightmare unfold, Raven screams in absolute panic as countless spiders rush toward them all at once. Commander Bardic shouts loudly, warning everyone about the overwhelming number of monsters. He urgently suggests that they retreat immediately. However, Eugene shoots him a sharp and cold glance, asking him what he even means by retreat, clearly disapproving of the idea. In the next instant, Eugene charges forward like a violent storm. He moves through the spiders at terrifying speed, slicing their bodies apart in the blink of an eye. Blood sprays through the air as his sword tears through them effortlessly. His eyes shine with frightening confidence, and with a mocking smile, he declares that this many enemies mean absolutely nothing to him. Bardic orders Raven to protect Eugene's back, but Raven is already struggling just to defend himself. He can barely keep the spiders away as panic takes over. While fighting at the front, Eugene notices that danger is closing in on his follower. Raven screams for help, his voice shaking with terror as spiders crawl toward him from all sides. Suddenly, a massive spider leaps down from above, opening its jaws wide to swallow him whole. Raven freezes in fear, unable to move. At the very last second, Eugene appears. With one precise and powerful strike, he cuts the spider cleanly in half before it can touch Raven. Raven stares in shock and disbelief at the sight before him. Eugene stands there calmly, his presence overwhelming and terrifying. After saving Rabin's life, Eugene finishes off the spider with one decisive strike. Raven looks at him in complete amazement, secretly wondering if Eugene himself is the true monster here. Gathering himself, Raven stands up and, as usual, praises Eugene with deep admiration for his unbelievable strength. He then suggests that they return now, saying they have already achieved enough. Raven calls out to Commander Bardic, asking for his opinion, believing that everything is going well. But Bardic suddenly freezes, his face turning pale as a terrifying realization strikes him. Even among wandering monsters, there are ranks and hierarchies. High-rank monsters appear very rarely, which is why they are usually not considered when forming a subjugation squad. At that moment, a massive leg slowly moves across the spiderwebs above them. Bardic instantly understands what this means. That enormous size can only belong to one creature, the high-rank form of the giant cave spider. The Spider Lord emerges, its massive body filling the space as its glowing eyes stare down at them. A deep terror grips everyone's soul. Bardic screams in fear, ordering an immediate retreat. He shouts that they are no match for a Lord-rank monster and even suggests, with a trembling voice, calling Sir Galedic for help. But Eugene immediately rejects the idea. Without taking his eyes off the monster, he orders Bardic and Raven to retreat at once. Eugene's eye glows a deep crimson red as he declares savagely that this prey belongs to him alone. Bardic tries to respond, stuttering as a strange and horrifying feeling overwhelms him. His body refuses to obey him, and every nerve in his body screams for him to escape this place. This fear is not only because of the Spider Lord, but also because of the terrifying aura pouring out of Eugene. The fairy Miran watches the soldiers as they flee. She calmly comments that their instincts collapsed due to the massive difference in status and power between them and her master. Eugene asks Miran whether this spider lord is on the same level as the swamp lord he fought before. Miran answers that it is not. She explains that this monster appears to be far stronger. Hearing this, Eugene smiles, calmly concluding that the magic stone inside it must be even larger. With confidence, Eugene walks toward the enormous monster. He mocks it openly, telling it to resist as much as it wants. To Eugene, the harder a treasure chest is to open, the greater the reward waiting inside. The scene suddenly changes to a peaceful garden filled with sunlight. A small spider hangs from a thin thread, slowly lowering itself toward a teacup. Eugene flicks it away casually with his finger while sitting there in a calm, human form. It is revealed that the second ability Eugene gained after devouring the Swamp Lord's magic stone is camouflage. By combining this with his skin hardening ability, which protects his body, he is able to perfectly imitate natural human skin and hide his true form. Because of this ability, Eugene finally gains the freedom to stand under the sunlight. He no longer has to suffer the annoying trouble of constantly hiding himself. As he walks around without his mask, one of the attendees asks him in surprise if he is really moving around openly now. Soon, Eugene is sitting at a luxurious dining table, surrounded by nobles. A noble lady asks him gently if he wore the mask all this time just to hide such a handsome face. Others eagerly ask him to tell stories about his heroic deeds inside the dungeon. The ladies speak with admiration, mentioning the rumors that say he defeated a giant spider all by himself, while Eugene quietly listens without responding. Above him, the fairy Miran laughs and mocks him, saying that her master's energy is being completely drained by this exhausting social situation. The ladies become even bolder in their flirting, praising his outstanding beauty. One of them even wonders aloud if he has elf blood somewhere in his lineage. Eugene is shocked by this sudden assumption. In his mind, he worries that being mistaken for an elf would only make things more troublesome and complicated than they already are. Just then, a knight suddenly slams his hand on the table in excitement, loudly declaring that everything makes sense now. The knight explains that this would justify Eugene's sharp eyesight, which worked even in the pitch-black dungeon, as well as his hearing, which is better than that of wild dogs. With a piercing and confident gaze, the knight concludes that he always knew Eugene could not be just an ordinary human. Eugene grows nervous, carefully hiding the truth within himself. Galedic raises his voice during the banquet, lifting his drink cup as he loudly expresses his amazement at the idea that elf blood might be flowing through Eugene's veins. At the same time, Robin awkwardly tries to slip away from this uncomfortable group situation. Galedic then points at Eugene's face with curiosity, wondering how someone with such striking features managed to stay hidden for so long, saying it must have been very difficult in these lands. Eugene calmly replies that he did not hide his identity or appearance on purpose, but that circumstances forced him to do so. Galedic looks surprised by this answer, while the noble ladies and young Robin appear embarrassed and confused by his loud and playful behavior. Galedic then comments on how smoothly Eugene spoke sweet words to the ladies without hesitation, which impresses them greatly. As Eugene watches everything calmly, he realizes that despite Galedic's carefree and frivolous behavior, the man possesses an unusually sharp insight. Eugene decides that if he faces suspicion again in the future, claiming to have elf origins might actually be a reasonable and convincing excuse. Eugene's thoughts drift back to the moment when he devoured the magic stone. He realizes that this act did not only grant him a new ability, but also opened the door to something much deeper. The moment the tattoo disappeared from his body, memories he had never known began flooding his mind like a raging torrent. In those memories, he sees himself in his current form, lying in a place completely unfamiliar to him. A soft hand is holding his, and he is surrounded by people as the sound of bells echoes through the air. Eugene feels confused as he wonders who the woman in that memory is, the one who was smiling at him. Then a darker doubt forms in his mind. Are these memories even truly his? He has no memory of his past at all. The only thing he remembers clearly is his name, Eugene. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted by Robin's trembling voice calling out, "Sir Eugene." Eugene turns around and sees Robin with a terrified expression, desperately asking to be saved from the situation he is in. At that moment, Galedic appears, tightly gripping Robin by the neck and scolding him in a rough yet playful manner. He calls Robin nothing more than a heavy burden weighing down Sir Eugene. Eugene. Robin screams as he tries to defend himself, shouting that he ran away because Sir Eugene is not human, and that any normal person would have fled to save their own life in that situation. Dick becomes even more excited and violent as he continues to train Robin, angrily asking if he is now calling Sir Eugene a monster. While Eugene watches the scene with a cold expression, his thoughts return inward. He confirms once again that the only name he knows is Eugene. However, recent events awaken a strong intuition within him. He begins to believe that if he erases these tattoos one by one, just like what happened earlier, he may be able to uncover the hidden truth about himself. As Robin's desperate screams for mercy continue in the background, Eugene stares forward with determined eyes, fully resolved to discover who he truly is. The scene changes to Lord Tyen's room. Eugene and Dick enter after Lord Tyen is informed that the dungeon opening has been successfully suppressed. Dick steps forward first and introduces himself politely. He bows with respect and says that he is Karima, Dick's third son, and that it is a great honor for him to meet Lord Tyen. Then Eugene steps forward. He also bows respectfully and introduces himself as Jan, the eldest son of the Eugene family. Lord Tyen looks at both of them and comments that they must have gone through many hardships to achieve this result. Lord Tyen then orders his servant to bring their reward. He explains that he was told Sir Eugene needs a certificate to prove his identity, even though he personally believes such a document has little real value. Eugene receives the certificate, which officially guarantees his status as Jan of the Eugene family, and he thanks Lord Tyen sincerely for it. While the fairy Miran celebrates quietly, thinking that their plan has succeeded perfectly, Lord Tyen is suddenly struck by a violent coughing fit. His son, Kamar, rushes to his side in panic, calling out to his father with worry in his voice. Lord Tyen speaks weakly and admits that the ambition of his second son has weighed so heavily on his heart that he has not been able to rest peacefully. Kamar tries to reassure him, asking his father not to worry. He promises that he will protect and lead this territory, the land his father built with his entire life and sincere effort. Lord Tyen holds Kamar's hand tightly and gives him his final advice. He tells him that land itself is nothing more than dust and dirt, and that a true lord must understand something far more important. With his last strength, Lord Tyen concludes his words by saying that a leader must not fix his eyes on the land, but on the people he leads. In the background, Vilai stands silently, listening carefully to every word. Slowly, Lord Tyen's hand slips from Kamar's grasp and falls lifeless. His death is quietly announced in that moment. Eugene watches the scene thoughtfully. He reflects that even though he did not know Lord Tyen very well, many people are crying sincerely over his death. However, he also realizes that when death arrives, not everyone reacts the same way. Eugene catches a glimpse of the second son, Bertel. Instead of sadness, Bertel's face is twisted with anger, making it clear that grief is not shared by everyone. As the sun begins to set, Dick prepares to leave during the funeral ceremony. He apologizes to Kamar for having to depart at such a critical moment. Kamar understands and says that he knows how busy their schedule is. Dick then turns to Eugene and asks if he truly plans to stay behind. Eugene answers him with a serious expression. He explains that he intends to visit the dungeon again, because leaving now would waste all the effort they went through to open it. Dick smiles regretfully and says it is unfortunate, because Count Evero would have greatly wished to meet someone like Eugene. Suddenly, Dick extends his hand toward Eugene. With a wide smile, he says it was a great honor to test his strength against such a powerful knight, and he hopes that next time they meet, they will not be enemies. Eugene accepts the handshake. Their hands clasp firmly, showing mutual respect and recognition between two warriors. After that, Dick mounts his horse and rides away. Robin waves goodbye to him, wishing him a safe journey, while Eugene orders Bardic to prepare for departure. Vilide looks confused and reminds Eugene that he just said he would stay here. Bardic then asks Vilide what Dick was riding when he left. Vilide answers simply that it was a horse. Bardic points out that it is only natural for a knight to ride a steed. Bardic laughs and explains their plan. They will head to the merchant guild to sell the monster materials and then buy a horse for Sir Eugene as well. Vilide's eyes sparkle with excitement. He says he understands now and proudly swears to Eugene that as his squire, he will serve him with all his strength. However, Eugene suddenly shoots Vilide a cold and frightening look. He tells him clearly that he will not need his help right now. Vilide is shocked and stunned by these words. In a weak and confused voice, he asks Eugene what he means by that. The scene then shifts to the city of Marin, the largest trading city in the kingdom of Kalar. The city is full of life and movement, crowded with people Balin merchants everywhere. Vilide is shown carrying heavy boxes, sweating heavily, while a worker shouts at him to move faster and stop slacking off. In the middle of the busy crowd, Robin stands proudly and boasts loudly to everyone. He tells them that a single night brought back all these dungeon materials, pointing directly at Sir Jan Eugene. The crowd starts buzzing with whispers and shock. People talk among themselves, remembering the rumors about a rookie knight who cleared the dungeon opening in Taiyan territory. They whisper that this knight even tore off a troll's head while it was still alive. Vilide finally puts down the heavy load he was carrying, clearly exhausted, while Robin shouts loudly at the merchant, warning him not to touch the goods. Outside the building, Vilide waits patiently and looks at the entrance. He notices that the discussion inside is taking a very long time. Inside the room, Eugene is sitting across from Merchant Belmore of the Balin Merchant Guild. Belmore speaks with overflowing enthusiasm, confidently stating that he will personally take full responsibility for handling all the dungeon materials. Eugene recalls how he had felt doubtful when Bardic first mentioned that he knew a good guild. As Belmore continues proudly talking about how large and influential his guild is, Eugene thinks to himself that this could be very useful, especially since he knows almost nothing about human social connections and trade networks. Suddenly, the door is pushed open violently. A dignified man wearing a monocle storms into the room, completely interrupting the conversation. At that moment, Belmore was just offering Eugene the best shipping rates, using his experience to promise an exclusive contract. The imposing man sharply demands to know who Sir Eugene is. Bardic leans close to Eugene and whispers nervously that the situation has become a bit complicated. Eugene calmly asks him why. Bardic quietly explains that this man is a secretary working under the deputy manager of the Balin Merchant Guild, which means someone with real authority has stepped in. Bardic further explains that this man is trying to take advantage of the situation. As Secretary GRA has far more bargaining power than Merchant Belmore, he can easily interfere with the deal they are trying to finalize. Bardic gives Eugene a subtle warning, advising him to act carefully if he wants to secure a stable trading partner. Belmore tries to object, saying that he is already in the middle of negotiating a contract with Eugene. However, GRA rudely pushes Belmore in the face with his hand to shut him up. He mocks Belmore, pointing out that there is no officially signed contract yet. GRA then mentions the rumors spreading from the port about a knight who ripped a troll's head off with his bare hands in Taiyan territory and brought back a mountain of dungeon materials. He immediately dismisses these stories, saying they are probably exaggerated rumors used by rookies to inflate the value of their goods, and claims he can easily see through such tricks. GRA arrogantly announces that the deputy manager of the Balin Merchant Guild wants to sign the contract with Eugene personally. He orders Eugene to get up and leave this shabby place, thinking to himself that Eugene is just a rookie knight who only knows brute force and that he will strip him of everything. Suddenly, GRA's expression changes completely. His eyes widen in terror as he feels an overwhelming pressure coming from Eugene. Eugene stares at him with a cold and frightening gaze, making GRA feel the true weight of the power standing before him. Sweat pours down GRA's face as he hurriedly apologizes, stammering badly for his rude behavior. He formally introduces himself again, this time properly, as the secretary to the deputy manager of the Balin Guild, saying this will be a great opportunity for Sir Eugene. Eugene asks him in a completely emotionless voice what this opportunity actually is. GRA, confused and trembling, tries to explain that they can offer better terms for the materials. Eugene cuts him off with a sharp look and asks exactly what these better terms are. GRA becomes even more nervous and explains that the deputy manager himself will personally handle everything. As Eugene continues staring at him, one of Eugene's eyes begins to glow red. Unable to bear the pressure any longer, GRA completely breaks down. He apologizes repeatedly, insisting that he never meant to act rudely. GRA then flees the room in panic, shouting apologies and promising to come back another time. He slams the door shut behind him. Belmore looks at Eugene with tears streaming down his face. He is deeply moved and cannot believe that Eugene rejected a contract with the deputy manager for his sake. Overcome with emotion, Belmore vows to give Eugene his full and unconditional support from now on. Eugene is pleased to hear this. Excited and energized, Belmore eagerly asks Eugene when they should begin the selling procedures. Eugene answers firmly that they will start right away and tells Belmore to come outside with him. This response surprises Belmore greatly. At the luxurious headquarters of the Merchant Guild, GRA stands with his head lowered before the deputy manager. He reports that Eugene rejected their offer. He tries to excuse his failure by saying that Eugene is not an ordinary man, just as the rumors claim. The deputy manager calmly tells him to raise his head. She remarks remarks that knights often cause trouble for merchants in order to protect their pride or their reputation. A cruel smile appears on her face as she adds that merchants possess money and goods, and because of that, it will not be difficult to trouble Eugene in their own way. She walks to the window and looks outside, her eyes landing on Eugene standing in the street below. She describes him mockingly as a poor knight who does not even own a proper horse. Then she gives Gra an order. She tells him to go and present Sir Eugene with a gift. She emphasizes that it must be a gift so valuable that a broke knight like Eugene will not be able to refuse it. The scene shifts back to Eugene. Vilide is completely shocked when Eugene tells him to stay behind and handle the selling of the materials. Eugene repeats his order clearly and strictly, telling Vilide to continue selling the monster materials he brought, working with Merchant Belmore. Vilide asks with sadness and confusion why he has to stay behind again. He wonders if it is because he lacks the skills needed to follow Sir Eugene. He immediately declares that he is ready to start sword training right away if that is the problem. Eugene interrupts him and asks a direct question about what a squire's role actually is. Vilide answers eagerly that a squire's job is to help the knight he serves, both in battle and in daily life. Eugene agrees with this answer. Then Eugene calmly explains, looking at him meaningfully, that his current duty as a squire is to help Eugene in his daily life. That means handling commercial and practical tasks. Eugene clearly defines Vilide's task, ordering him to sell the materials brought back from battle in order to raise the money they need. He tells Vilide to discuss all details with Merchant Belmore, who will teach him the basics of business. Eugene adds that Belmore will be a good teacher for him in this field. Vilide realizes deep in his heart that without Sir Eugene, he would have died long ago. Complaining about a simple task like this would be shameful. Eugene notices the boy's thoughts and gives him extra motivation. He promises that once they collect some money, he will seriously consider teaching Vilide sword techniques. Eugene adds that one day, Vilide will truly help him in battle as his proper squire. Vilide's eyes shine with excitement and gratitude. He places his hand on his chest and sincerely accepts Sir Eugene's order with full devotion. After that, Eugene leaves the shop. However, after buying only the most basic equipment, he finds himself completely broke. He wonders in disbelief how money disappears so quickly. The fairy Miran flies around him, grumbling that her wallet is empty and that her heart feels empty too. She urgently asks if they can make money again soon. Eugene suddenly stops in front of a shop window and stares at a shining suit of armor. Bardik looks at the full plate armor with admiration and calls it every knight's romance. Eugene asks in surprise if by romance, he means that it is expensive. Bardik replies that it is not just expensive, but something so valuable that even rich knight families pass it down through generations. At that moment, a loud scream interrupts them, calling Eugene boss. Robin comes running toward them with a panicked expression. He announces that a massive horde of wandering monsters has appeared on the outskirts of Marin City. Raven explains that the monsters are coming from the eastern forest and are trying to invade the city. He adds that the existing guild forces can barely hold them back. Bardik suggests that they should participate in the subjugation operation. Eugene asks him coldly what reason he has for saying that. Raven answers with intense excitement, striking a fighting pose. He explains that unlike dungeon clearing, which has an owner, subjugating wandering monsters has no commission fees. He adds eagerly that Marin City is a merchant city overflowing with money, making it the perfect place to sell monster materials and loot at high prices without any transport costs. Raven steps closer, his eyes filled with greedy excitement, and sums it all up in one simple phrase. It means huge money. As soon as Eugene hears the word money, his expression changes completely. His eyes sharpen, his mood shifts, and without wasting even a second, he gives a clear order to move out immediately. Just as they are about to leave, someone suddenly blocks their path while shouting for them to wait. The person turns out to be Secretary Grail. Grail is panting heavily, standing beside a horse, clearly exhausted, and asks why everyone is running so fast. After catching his breath, Grail proudly announces that he came to deliver a warhorse as a gift, personally sent by the deputy manager. He gestures toward the horse and begins explaining its qualities in detail. The horse has silky black fur that shines under the light, and its muscles are thick and powerful, looking as if they were carefully sculpted. Grail confidently declares that this is a high-lineage thoroughbred steed, an extremely valuable and rare horse. Eugene looks surprised and wonders if the deputy manager really sent something like this specifically for him. At that moment, Grail notices that familiar terrifying look in Eugene's eyes again. Fear instantly takes over him, and he hurriedly steps back, stammering that they want nothing in return for the gift. Eugene does not react to Grail's fear at all. He calmly walks toward the horse. Grail, still nervous, hurriedly adds that this is just a small token of their sincere goodwill. Eugene ignores the explanation, grabs the reins, and mounts the horse smoothly and naturally, as if he has ridden such steeds his entire life. Looking down at Grail, Eugene tells him to pass along his thanks to his mistress. Grail stares at him in shock, unable to hide his amazement. The next moment, Eugene kicks off and rides away at incredible speed. The fairy Miran screams in pure joy, shouting excitedly and urging Eugene to go collect money as fast as possible. Robin and Bartek stand frozen in place, completely stunned by the terrifying speed of the horse. Robin blurts out nervously, wondering what they are supposed to do now that their leader has already taken off alone. Bartek snaps back at him loudly, yelling for him to start running immediately if he wants to catch up. Meanwhile, Grail remains standing where he is, silently watching them disappear into the distance. In the forest on the eastern outskirts of Marin City, a brutal and bloody battle is already underway. Humans are fighting desperately against a massive group of savage goblins. Screams, clashing metal, and the stench of blood fill the air. Suddenly, the thunderous sound of horse hooves cuts through the chaos. Eugene appears riding his new black steed, charging straight into the battlefield. Goblins are crushed beneath the horse's hooves without mercy. Eugene swings his sword with incredible skill, slicing through goblins that block his path. Heads are severed, blood sprays into the air, and his arrival is announced in the most violent way possible. Miran immediately realizes how serious the situation is. Seeing the overwhelming number of goblins, she understands that this attack is far larger than expected. She guesses that the Marin Guild members who were fighting at the front were likely already wiped out. Eugene's face turns cold and resolute. Instead of fear, a calm calculation fills his mind. To him, this situation is actually perfect. Driven by pure selfish desire, he urges his horse forward even faster. He has no intention of sharing loot with anyone. In his mind, all of this belongs to him. The horse's hooves slam powerfully against the ground as Eugene rushes deeper into the forest, heading straight toward the center of the battle at lightning speed. From a distance, Eugene notices a blonde knight fighting desperately among the goblins. The knight shouts angrily at the monsters, calling them demons and swearing that they will not advance another step unless it is over his dead body. His courage burns fiercely, but courage alone is not enough. The goblins overwhelm him with numbers. His horse stumbles and collapses, throwing the knight violently to the ground right in the middle of the enemy swarm. The knight coughs heavily as he tries to stand, declaring proudly that he is a righteous knight and swearing by the name of Marin. But that pride shatters instantly. Surrounded by goblins on all sides, his face drains of color and turns to pure terror. He screams at the top of his lungs, begging for help, crying out desperately to be saved from the death closing in on him. At that exact moment, Eugene's sword falls like a bolt of lightning from the sky. The goblin about to kill the knight is split cleanly in two. Eugene charges through the siege on horseback, swinging his sword at terrifying speed. Goblins are slaughtered one after another, their limbs flying through the air as he clears the area around the fallen knight. The knight stares in shock and disbelief at the man who appeared out of nowhere to save him. Eugene continues fighting without pause, pushing the goblins back and expanding the safe space around them. The knight manages a strange, relieved smile and admits that he now owes Eugene a huge debt. In the middle of the chaos, he asks for Eugene's name. But before Eugene can respond, another goblin launches a sneaky attack toward the knight. Once again, Eugene intervenes instantly, cutting the goblin down before it can strike. Without even looking at him, Eugene asks coldly whether knowing his name really matters right now. He points out that if they die here, names and debts will mean absolutely nothing. The knight suddenly bursts into loud, hysterical laughter. He admits that Eugene is right, and as he laughs, his madness and fighting spirit return completely. He forces himself to stand up again, points his weapon toward the goblins, and threatens them fiercely. He shouts that if they manage to survive this living hell, he will ask Eugene's name again. What follows is a brutal and intense battle at the gates of the great merchant city Moran. Hundreds of goblins swarm forward endlessly, pouring in like ants. Even so, the defenders refuse to back down and fight until their final breath. In the middle of life and death moments, Eugene slaughters goblins without mercy, while the blonde knight fights fiercely at his side, matching him step for step. After a long and exhausting struggle, their efforts finally pay off. The goblins are driven back, and the city is successfully defended. When the battle ends, the people of the city begin talking excitedly among themselves, wondering who that mysterious knight was who appeared out of nowhere and saved them. Soon, the blonde knight steps forward and proudly announces his name to everyone. He declares that he is Jan Eugene. The crowd immediately erupts into whispers and admiration. Stories spread rapidly about his bravery, including wild tales of how he ripped the spine out of a living troll. The people begin to see him as their new hero. Cheers echo throughout the city as the name Jan Eugene is shouted again and again. From a high window, a red-haired man with a thick beard silently watches the scene. This man is Louis Valen, the former representative of the Marin City Mayor's Guild. He mutters darkly to himself, warning that the more Eugene's fame grows, the harder it will become to deal with him or control him. Louis turns to his granddaughter Priscilla and anxiously asks if she is truly sure that leaving things as they are is safe. Priscilla responds calmly and confidently, saying that everything is still well within their control. She smiles slyly and tells her grandfather that she actually hopes Lord Eugene's fame spreads even more. She explains her reasoning clearly. The higher a knight's fame rises, the more afraid he becomes of losing that position and reputation. Then she asks her grandfather if he knows about the heir who is currently accompanying Eugene. Louis confirms that he does, saying it is the child whose name Eugene is using to sell monster materials to the guild. Priscilla then reveals a dangerous truth she has discovered. That child is an illegitimate and hidden son of the Tyan family. Louis is shocked by this revelation and immediately understands how serious and important this information is. Priscilla concludes that no matter what Eugene's true goal may be, he is clearly trying to earn a massive amount of money to support the Tyan family's child. She adds thoughtfully that if they stay close to both Eugene and the child, they may be able to build a strong relationship with someone who could one day become the next head of the Tyan family. Louis laughs loudly, clearly impressed by his granddaughter's sharp thinking. He praises her plan, which relies on securing the loyalty and support of the knight who is protecting that illegitimate child. As the mayor of Marin City, Louis decides that he must send a valuable gift to Lord Eugene as a reward for eliminating the wandering monster threat. He tells Priscilla that he will list her name as the recommender of the gift so she can gain benefits by strengthening her relationship with Eugene. Priscilla thanks him sincerely. Later, Priscilla calmly sips her tea and thinks about an old saying, "A thirsty person will always go looking for water." She decides that instead of chasing them, she will dig the well and wait patiently. As she hears footsteps approaching the room, her eyes sharpen with determination. She plans to wait until they willingly drink the water she offers, without hesitation or doubt. When the door opens, Priscilla welcomes her guest with a warm smile, calling him the hero who saved Marin City. Eugene enters the room wearing brand new armor. He tells her that he came to personally thank her as the deputy manager of the Valen Guild. Priscilla politely invites him to sit. As they drink tea, she secretly studies his face, amazed that someone so handsome could possess the terrifying strength needed to tear off a troll's head. Deep inside, she realizes he is completely different from any knight she has ever met. Priscilla praises the armor he is wearing, saying it fits him perfectly. She explains that the mayor gifted it to him and that she personally supervised its creation at the finest workshop in Moran. She goes on to describe the armor's specifications, saying it is made from special steel mixed with El's iron and ghoul bones, making it so strong that even dragon fangs would struggle to pierce it. She then asks Eugene what he thinks of the armor. Eugene responds in a cold, calm voice that thanks to this armor, the next dungeon raid will be much safer. Eugene calmly expresses his gratitude for the accommodations and meals provided during his stay, noting that his mercenaries appear healthier and stronger thanks to the care, which he expects will lead to even greater results in the future. Priscilla smiles slyly, pleased that her gifts have earned his approval, and Eugene assures her that he will properly acknowledge her goodwill. Seizing the moment, Priscilla begins to propose a practical arrangement to further her advantage, but Eugene interrupts abruptly. He rises, stating he is busy and must leave, leaving Priscilla stunned by his sudden departure. As he moves toward the door, Eugene clarifies without looking back that after the Tyan family dungeon raid is complete, there will be plenty more matters to address. Importantly, he emphasizes that his current contract pertains only to dungeon byproducts, implying that this might be their last interaction for the foreseeable future. Priscilla, angered by his words, bites her lip in frustration, but Eugene adds coldly, "I will now focus on collecting magic stones," before walking away. Priscilla suddenly calls after him, demanding he wait. Eugene stops and turns, his crimson red eye narrowing as he asks what she means. Dropping her pretense of courtesy, Priscilla stares directly at him and reveals her true intentions. She enumerates the lavish gifts she has provided, the finest full-plate armor in Marin, a purebred warhorse, luxurious hotel accommodations, and gourmet meals for his mercenaries, pointing out that the dungeon byproducts he sold barely cover half their value. Fixing him with a sharp glare, she challenges him, implying that he is deeply in their debt and questions his honor as a knight. Mocking him, she calls him the hero of Marin, Lord Eugene, and dares him to justify himself if he plans to simply take everything and leave. Eugene, however, reacts in a way she does not expect. A terrifying, mocking smile spreads across his face as he remarks that her attempt is amusing. Stepping closer, his crimson eye glowing, he flips the conversation back on her. He accuses her of being the one who summons people at her whim, forces gifts upon them, and then demands payment for those very gifts. In a voice low and icy, he calls her merely a merchant, the weight of his presence filling the room with a suffocating tension. Everyone, including Bardic and Belmore, is struck speechless by the sheer pressure radiating from him, while sweat beads on Priscilla's face. Eugene states his position clearly and firmly, making sure she cannot misunderstand. He has already signed a contract with the Balan Merchant Guild through Belmore, and as long as they buy his goods fairly, he does not care what the citizens of Marin whisper behind his back. With razor-sharp precision, he returns her own words to her, pointing out that everything has a price, and that she will soon learn exactly what that truly means as a guild deputy manager. His verbal assault continues, accusing her actions of making it seem like the Balan Guild is colluding with Marin City to trap the knight who saved them. He delivers a final, chilling warning. If this behavior persists, he doubts any knight would dare step up the next time Marin faces danger. With that, Eugene declares he is finished here and walks away. Bardic, ever sly, steps in with a mock apology, addressing the deputy manager with a grin and pretending regret over the unexpected turn of events. Priscilla realizes, belatedly, the gravity of her miscalculation. She understands that had she approached the situation differently, they could have built a powerful partnership. Now, faced with the reality of Eugene's overwhelming authority and unwavering resolve, she sees she has completely lost control. Belmore looks on nervously, confirming her realization. Eugene has decisively turned the situation in his favor. Just as Eugene moves to exit the room, Priscilla's voice trembles through the air, catching him off guard. "Sir Eugene, please, wait," she calls out urgently. Without hesitation, she bows deeply, placing a hand over her heart in a gesture of sincere apology. Her voice, though quivering, carries weight as she admits she acted insolently, confessing that her desire for influence over him clouded her judgment. She expresses genuine remorse for her lack of respect and beseeches him to grant her a fresh start, proposing a compromise that keeps the existing contract with Belmore intact, with one additional clause ensuring that the concerns Sir Eugene carries will never come to pass. As she speaks, Priscilla studies Eugene closely, her mind sharp and calculating despite the humility she outwardly displays. She reflects on the many knights she has encountered, knights who, at the mere promise of wealth or sponsorship, crawl on their bellies and betray their own principles. They chase money and fame like fools, losing all sense of self. Yet, Eugene, he is different. Too dangerous, too commanding to be manipulated like the others. Her instincts as a merchant scream that she cannot afford to lose him, no matter the cost. Every fiber of her being tells her that the slightest misstep could result in disaster. Eugene pauses mid-step, turning his gaze toward her. The crimson glow in his eye sharpens as he speaks, his voice low and measured. "I will listen," he says, "but whatever you say must be worth my time." There's a weight behind his words, a subtle command that Priscilla cannot ignore. She exhales softly, her shoulders relaxing for the briefest moment, and smiles with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, Sir Eugene," she murmurs, her voice softening, "for showing mercy, for granting me another chance." Later, Eugene is seen riding his newly gifted horse, the black steed cutting a striking figure as the sun glints off its glossy coat. The fairy Miran flutters around him, her small form brimming with admiration. "Even if it's just for show, master," she exclaims in awe, "you look magnificent." Her voice carries a tone of adoration, declaring him the greatest in the world. Bardic, ever observant, grins broadly as he comments on the excellence of the contract Eugene secured. Eugene acknowledges him with a simple nod, while Bardic elaborates further, pointing out the massive influence and reach of the Balan Merchant Guild. Their headquarters are in Marin, he explains, with hundreds of branches across the Roman Empire. Trading with nobles like the Taiyan family is of immense importance. He gestures to a map spread across the table, indicating that access to any dungeon or maze connected to these branches is an extraordinary advantage. Bardic praises Eugene's negotiation skills, remarking that obtaining such a contract is far superior to official backing from any noble family. Eugene, however, frowns slightly, irritated by the attention. The funny thing, he mutters, is I only said all that because the situation was vexing. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by a coarse, mocking voice. Do you think wearing shiny plates makes you a knight? The words cut sharply through the room, drawing everyone's attention. A massive, bald mercenary stands before them, sneering at Eugene with disdain. He gestures at Eugene's perfectly fitted armor, his tone dripping with doubt and derision. You really think someone like you can hold a sword properly? He scoffs, eyeing Eugene's fair and striking face as if it were a weakness. Eugene's gaze narrows, the cold contempt in his expression matching the mercenary's hostility. Miran hovers near his shoulder, her tiny voice chirping in disdain. He looks like a potato, talking nonsense. At that moment, Kamar appears, his timing impeccable. Lord Eugene, he greets, bowing slightly, but quickly shifting to a more relaxed posture. Please, speak freely as before, he says, noting the tremendous change in Eugene over such a short period. Eugene nods respectfully but quickly shifts his attention to the matter at hand. What's the current situation? He asks, his voice calm but commanding. Kamar explains that his brother has not relented. Instead, he has hired new mercenaries, though something about this new force seems suspicious. Eugene's eyes narrow, remembering the corrupt mercenaries previously hired to abduct Villi. He observes the newcomers carefully, noting that while they share a similarly foul aura, there are subtle differences in their demeanor, just enough to suggest they are potentially more capable but equally dangerous. Kamar steps forward formally, requesting Eugene to assume command for the upcoming dungeon raid. Before Eugene can respond, the bald mercenary, his insolence undeterred, cuts in rudely, addressing Kamar directly. And if this Eugene dies inside the dungeon, he hisses, will you become the next leader? The audacity of the statement shocks everyone in the room, the sheer disrespect hanging thick in the air. The mercenary justifies himself, stating coldly that the dungeon is no place for frivolity, lives are cheaper than flies here, and they must prepare for the worst. His malicious grin and bared teeth make it clear he relishes the prospect of chaos and danger. Eugene's reaction is deliberate, cold, and unnervingly calm. If I die, he says, his tone ice-cold, then yes, you may become the leader. He punctuates the words by addressing the mercenary directly, Baldy. The name strikes with precision, a calculated strike of authority, and it enrages the mercenary, whose composure fractures under Eugene's unyielding demeanor. Eugene then turns to the assembled knights, issuing his orders with clarity and precision. They are to move out immediately, the dungeon raid commencing without delay. Miran flutters closer to Eugene, her small wings beating rapidly as she whispers urgently, Master, watch that man. He's dangerous. Eugene, unmoved, casts a calculated glance over his shoulder, eyes gleaming with determination. I've got him under my watch, he assures her calmly, his focus unshakable. Every step he takes, every decision he makes, radiates confidence, discipline, and an unwavering mastery of the situation. The room, filled with anticipation and tension, seems to bend subtly to his presence, a silent acknowledgement that Eugene, Jan Eugene, commands not just respect, but control over the battlefield and every element surrounding it. This moment is more than preparation, it is a demonstration of dominance, strategy, and sheer psychological acuity. Eugene's calm authority in the face of audacity, his unflinching evaluation of allies and foes alike, and the absolute certainty with which he commands, all mark him as a figure whose power extends beyond mere physical skill, a knight who bends. If you enjoyed this story and want to know what happens next, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment part 2 below. Your support really helps, and the next episode is going to be even crazier.